Noah is reincarnated as a noble one day, but there's a major problem. Just take a look at that status screen, nothing but pure Asian parent disappointment. He was born as the 13th prince of the imperial royal family, and the emperor is quite interested in seeing his new baby boy. He is informed that Noah's highest magic affinity is with water, so he decides to gift him a fief near the water as a first birthday present. And as soon as he says that, Noah notices something appear next to his E-rank water magic. The emperor then asks to see Noah's stat screen, and Noah is a little worried since with a report card like this, he'd definitely end up getting thrown in a dumpster, but miraculously, when his status screen is displayed, his water magic stat has changed from E to double S rank. Everything else is still a solid F, but who cares about that? A literal baby has the highest water magic stat any of them have ever seen. And it's a clear indication that he's going to be a genius water mage in the future, so the emperor takes a liking to Noah. The reason his water magic is SS rank is due to the fief that he was granted by his father at birth, although on his personal status screen, it still appears as an E plus S. The other increases to his stats came from his maids, and he's still not sure why, but it seems like the more servants he has, the stronger he becomes. As for his level, it's still only 1, but it can apparently be raised infinitely, so he's bound to become overpowered eventually. But for now, he's still pretty weak. While having breakfast, one of his maids, Evelyn, comes over to inform him that his brothers, specifically the 1st and 4th princes, have come to see him. Normally, being visited by your brothers would be a good thing, but in the past 6 years of his life, Noah has learnt that those two are massive jerks, so he has to be very careful when dealing with them. He heads to the lounge area to meet his brothers, and after formal greetings, the 1st prince announces that he brought a gift for Noah. He then calls for his servant to bring the gift in, and as soon as Noah sees the sword, it immediately becomes clear to him that that shit is cursed. He could literally see the tormented souls of the dead hovering around it, and Albert definitely knows this thing is haunted, but he's pretending that it's just a normal gift. There's no way Noah can refuse a gift from the crown prince, so he is forced to accept it even though he knows it probably won't end well. He grabs the handle and lifts it up as Albert casually explains that this is a water magic sword and over 120 knights have died trying to use it. Noah is startled when he hears this, so he loosens his grip on the sword. But the 4th prince tells him there's no need to worry because so far, everyone who was unworthy of the sword died the moment they picked it up, so if the curse was going to affect him, he would already be dead by now. The reason Noah is immune to the curse is likely thanks to his double S water magic attribute, and it's kind of reassuring to hear that he's not at risk of dying because of this thing, but Noah is still pissed at the fact that Albert just risked his life for a dumb experiment, but he can't say that out loud. So he just waits for Albert to get up and leave on his own so he can have some peace and quiet. Later that day, Noah is walking through the halls with one of his maids, Zoe, and he notices that she seems to be unhappy, so he asks her if something is wrong. Zoe doesn't want to bother Noah by talking about her problems, so she's fine, but Noah is certain that she's not fine, so he orders her to tell him what the problem is immediately. Zoe complies and tells Noah she actually wants to take some time off work to handle family matters. Noah asks what family matters she's referring to, so she explains that her hometown recently experienced a flood and her mother's farm was washed away, so she currently has no means of sustaining herself. Zoe asked for advice on how she could raise enough money to rebuild the farm, and she was told the only way would be to work in the red light district for a while, which is what she intended to do during her time off, but Noah won't stand for it. He tells her he's going to give her mother a job. After all, he's been meaning to hire a professional rear gate closer, and since she's coming with a recommendation, he will pay her 10 reen a month. Zoe asks Noah if he's sure about this because 10 reen is much higher than the standard salary, and she has never heard of a rear gate closer job, but that's because Noah just made it up. He wants to help Zoe out, and it's his money anyway, so who's going to stop him? He also tells her that he has an old house on the outskirts of town, and she and her mother can stay there so they don't have to worry about rent either. Zoe has served him faithfully all his life, so there's no way he would let her sell her body in the red light district because of a flood. But speaking of the flood, there's one more thing Noah needs to do. He calls for his butler, Dylan, and orders him to make arrangements to buy up as much of the flood-damaged land as possible. Both Dylan and Zoe are shocked to hear this, but Noah explains that there are bound to be con artists who would try to scam all the innocent people who just lost their livelihoods, so he wants to secure them before that happens. Dylan is left utterly speechless because he can't believe Noah was able to predict the outcomes so far ahead, even though he has so little experience as a 6-year-old. Noah experienced this kind of thing a lot during his past life, but he can't tell them that, so he just moves on without giving an explanation. Dylan is more than happy to help Noah procure the land, but he asks how they are going to acquire the funds to do so, since by his rough estimates, it would cost around 700,000 rein to pull that off. Zoe is shocked when she hears that number, and Noah doesn't blame her because it is practically a small fortune. The average adult here in the capital only earns 120 rein a year, and that's enough to afford a family, a house, and good food. Noah's household is obviously richer than the average adult, but even then, he only has about 500,000 rein to work with, so he needs to find a way to raise another 200,000 soon. He doesn't have many options, so he decides to sell the fief he owns, but Dylan tells him he can't do that. The land was a gift from the emperor, and selling it without permission would be a crime against the imperial family. Noah is aware of that, but he still wants to do it anyway because he has no other option, and he is willing to take whatever punishment his father decides to give him as a result. The next day, Noah and his retainers are busy making preparations to head to the flooded lands when he receives an unexpected visit from the fourth prince, Henry. Albert may be a jerk, but Henry is actually pretty nice once you get to know him, and he is genuinely concerned about Noah, so he came to warn him that the sword Albert gave him has a will of its own, so even if he is immune to the curse, he is still going to need to earn its recognition before he can use it safely. Noah takes his advice to heart, and shortly after, he departs for the village of Dasso. Upon arrival, he discovers that the word flood damage is a bit of an understatement for what happened here because it looks like Kratos and Poseidon had a fist fight out here. From the looks of things, Noah can tell that most of the homeowners must have lost their documents in the flood, so he orders Dylan to head to the government office and find all the copies he can get his hands on to make the purchase go smoother. In the meantime, Noah decides to head down there personally to see how the people are holding up after the flood. Zoe tries to stop him since reconnaissance isn't a job for a prince, but he tells her he's going whether she likes it or not, so she can either come with him or wait in the carriage until he returns. Zoe reluctantly agrees to go with Noah to investigate, and the situation is just as bad as it looks. All the crops have been completely destroyed, so there's no chance of there being a harvest this year, and without a harvest, the villagers won't be able to survive. Just then, Noah hears a bell ring and notices that all the villagers have started gathering in what used to be the town square. Zoe assumes that this must be for food distribution since the Empire provides disaster relief funds to all regions affected by natural disasters like these. Noah thinks it's good that this region's disaster relief system is functioning as intended, and he heads over to join the villagers in their meal. But the second he tastes the food, he takes back everything good he just said about this place. He has tasted British food that's less depressing than this sad excuse for a broth, and he's pretty sure the vegetables used here were rotten. One of the villagers hears Noah complaining about the food, and unaware of Noah's identity as a prince, he assumes he must be another unfortunate victim of the flood. He tells Noah that the food is always like this, and even if they complain, nothing is done about it because the people who made the food couldn't care less about dumb things like health or food poisoning. Just then, Noah hears a loud announcement about an inspection, so he asks Zoe what it's about and she informs him that the local government official, Lord Garrel, is here to inspect the quality of the food. Garrel walks up to the pot of mystery stew, and he thinks it looks like absolute shit, but he's not the one who has to eat it, so he doesn't care. He tells the chef to prepare some actual food for him back at the mansion, and the chef happily agrees since they both have an agreement. However, Noah refuses to let such callous behavior go unpunished. He confronts Garrel and asks him if he's allowing such substandard food to be served because he's pocketing the rest of the food budget for himself, and Garrel believes that Noah is just another powerless peasant. So he openly admits that he's skimming the food budget because he thinks there's nothing Noah can do about it. Listening to Garrel brag about stealing from starving flood survivors makes Noah's blood boil, so much so that the cursed sword begins to react. Garrel has had enough of listening to this random kid's disrespect, so he takes out his sword and prepares to slay him, but before he could do so, the Leviathan's sword flies out from its case and arrives next to Noah. Noah's strong will and sense of justice were enough for the sword to acknowledge him as a worthy wielder, so now that he is able to use its power, he effortlessly slices Garrel's head off for the crime of embezzling funds and threatening a royal prince. Soon after, Lord Rowan, Garrel's boss, shows up, and the guards try to convince him to have Noah arrested for killing Garrel. But as soon as Rowan sees Noah, he immediately recognizes him as the 13th prince and kneels to show his respect. Noah tells Rowan that they need to have a long chat regarding the situation here, which is a polite way of saying Rowan is in deep trouble for letting Garrel get away with this for so long. He says he has already punished Garrel, but the accomplices who helped him steal those funds are still over there, so he expects Rowan to deal with them appropriately. But in the meantime, Noah orders him to have a decent meal prepared for the people here. Later on, after Noah has completed the purchase of the village, Albert receives a report on what Noah has done, and he's surprised that his brother was able to use the sword without suffering any drawbacks, but he still has more plans in store for him in the future. Meanwhile, Noah is called into a meeting with his father to explain himself. He was fully expecting to be reprimanded for selling his land to buy a flood-damaged village, but to his surprise, the emperor actually thanks him. If Noah hadn't done what he did, then the damages suffered by those people would have been far greater. He can clearly see that Noah is a capable young man, so he asked him to continue serving the empire with everything he has, and Noah happily agrees. A little while later, we see Noah visiting the city of Mears, and he's here because he heard that there's a talented singer performing. As the show begins, Noah is captivated by the girl's beautiful voice, and he is really enjoying her performance. But all of a sudden, a group of thugs barges into the theater and immediately start yelling at the girl. The girl's father apparently owes them a lot of money, which is why she is working as a singer here to pay it back, but the thugs don't think she will be able to earn enough money to pay them back like this, so they threaten and yell at her to go work in the red light district. Everyone sees this happening, but they are all too scared to step up and do anything about it, so Noah decides to take action before things become any worse. He walks out onto the stage and quotes the law in the imperial constitution that specifically prohibits forcing children to pay off their parents' debts, so what they are doing is illegal. The thugs tell Noah to mind his own business and threaten to teach him a lesson if he doesn't back off, but Noah simply summons his sword and gives them all warning shots. Now, they know Noah isn't someone they can mess with, so they all back off, but they still yell that he's going to pay for this the next time they see him. Once the thugs are gone, Noah has his maid hand a business card to the owner of this theater and tells him that if those thugs happen to come back, he should tell them that the girl is under his protection. The owner takes a look at the card and is left speechless at the realization that Noah is the 13th prince. He then turns to the girl and asks her what her monthly living expenses cost. She is hesitant to answer since she spends a lot of money caring for her sick mother, but Noah suddenly tells her he is willing to pay her 25 roans so she can focus on singing without having to worry about money, and she doesn't have to worry about paying him back either. But for now, he would like her to finish her performance. After returning home, Noah is greeted by his head maid, and he is happy to be back home, but there are a bunch of people bowing outside the gate, and he's got no clue what that's about. The maid explains that those people are loan sharks, and they said they were here to apologize to him for what they did since they didn't realize that Noah was a prince. But Noah tells his maid to send them away because he isn't someone they can speak to whenever they wish. Just then, Henry shows up, and he heard the whole thing, so he tells Noah he made a smart choice because if he were to grant an audience to hoodlums like them, it would harm the reputation of the royal family. Noah agrees that it would be bad for their reputation to accommodate people like that, but that's not really the reason he chose to ignore them. He explains that there's actually a singer that he wants to support, and he felt that if he let the thugs think that he's still angry, then they wouldn't bother the girl anymore. Henry is surprised that Noah is willing to go so far for a singer, but he is just as surprised by the fact that he was able to think so far ahead in the first place. His other brothers like Frank and Gary are around his age, but they would never be able to come up with such a well-thought-out plan on the fly. Though, it's not like they are expected to since they are still children. Anyway, the reason Henry came here today is because he wants to discuss the sword, and on that note, Noah thanks him for the warning he gave last time about the sword having a will of its own, because it really helped him out. Henry is glad to hear it, but he wonders how Noah carries it around since the sword would normally be too big and inconvenient for a kid his size to carry, but Noah says that it's not much of a problem since he can do this. Henry is shocked when he sees Noah's sword appear out of nowhere, so he asks him how he did it, and Noah explains that he is simply shrinking his sword down and hiding it in his sleeve. The sword has been a national treasure for centuries at this point, yet no one has ever come close to doing something like this with it, and Henry takes this as a sign of Noah's natural talent. Later that evening, Noah escorts Henry to the front gate so he can return home, and that's when he notices that the thugs from earlier are still there begging for forgiveness, but he doesn't particularly care. One of the thugs is really annoyed by the fact that Noah keeps ignoring him, so he gets up and threatens to kill him, but Noah easily knocks him back down without moving a muscle. Henry asks him what he just did, so he explains that he just released some of Leviathan's power to get the man to calm down, and that indicates an amazing amount of control. But by this point, Henry isn't surprised anymore. That same evening, Noah decides to head into town for an event, and upon arrival, he is welcomed by the host, Radok. As they step into the banquet hall, Radok notices the sword at Noah's waist, and it looks rather special, so he asks him about it. Noah explains that this was a gift from his brother, the Great Sword, Leviathan, and they are all stunned at the realization that Noah is in possession of a national treasure. A few of the people present can't believe a child would own a national treasure even if he is a prince, and by a few people, I mean this particular dude in the back who openly says the sword is probably a replica toy. Noah refuses to let such disrespect go unpunished, so he unleashes a bit of his sword's power to prove that it is the real deal. But he ends up taking it a bit too far, nearly causing everyone present to faint from the overwhelming energy. He eventually ends his display of power, and everyone is visibly shaken. But to smooth things over, he talks about how amazing Noah is for being able to wield such a weapon, and everyone else goes along with it because they don't want to incur his wrath. In truth, Noah wasn't that angry about it, but the sword was, which is why it took action on his behalf. The host asks Noah what he plans to do with the man who disrespected him, and normally, a situation like this would call for serious punishment, but Noah decides to just let it go because it's not that deep. The party carries on as intended afterwards, and all the nobles approach Noah one after the other to introduce themselves. Next up is Byron Allen, the head of the Allen Company, and his daughter, Cindy. After taking one look at them, Noah deduces that Cindy must be adopted, and Byron is surprised to hear him say that, but Noah is indeed right about her being adopted. He asks how Noah could have known that Cindy is adopted, so he explains that he noticed that Byron carries himself with the composure of a noble born into high society, while Cindy carries herself as someone who is still learning the ins and outs. Furthermore, he can tell that she used to be a slave by the way she looked at him when he said she was adopted. Byron begins apologizing for not explaining sooner and clarifies that he indeed originally bought Cindy as a slave, but she is smart and learns quickly, so he thought it would be better to teach her as his daughter so she could inherit his business one day. He assumes Noah must hate the idea of a noble adopting a slave as his daughter, but on the contrary, Noah greatly approves of Byron's decision. He tells Byron that he and his daughter are welcome to visit his mansion anytime, because he would love to hear more about their lives. The next day, Noah heads out into the market to take a look around, and while there, he happens to run into one of his brothers, the 8th prince, Oscar. He asks what Noah is doing out here all by himself, so he explains that he was just taking a stroll for fun. Oscar doesn't see what's so fun about a stroll, but since Noah isn't busy right now, he asks him if he would like to join him for a little treasure hunt. This gets Noah's attention, so he agrees to join, and Oscar takes him to Cobalt Street. This place is known for the countless artifacts that are sold here, but there are also a fair number of counterfeits as well, which is why finding genuine artifacts is really difficult. Noah and Oscar spend the afternoon searching the market for any decent artifacts, but no matter how hard Oscar looked, he couldn't find anything good. He's ready to call it a day and head back home, but all of a sudden, Noah spots a book that catches his eye. He immediately offers to buy it, so the stall owner says he has to pay 3 reen. After paying, Oscar comes over to ask Noah if there's anything special about the book, but the second he lays his eyes on it, he realizes that the book is the grimoire of the legendary sorcerer, Andrea, and something this valuable would normally be worth thousands of reen, so the stall owner just lost his retirement fund without knowing it. Oscar asks how Noah knew it was a grimoire since very few actually know what it looks like. But in truth, Noah had no idea that this was a grimoire to begin with. He just saw one of his stats increase when he touched it, so he wanted to buy it for the stat boost. But now that he thinks about it, if this thing increases stats, then it must be similar to his sword, which would mean it has a consciousness of its own. To test his theory, Noah points Leviathan at the book, and all of a sudden, dark energy begins to pour out of it as a malevolent spirit emerges. Oscar now realizes that the grimoire must have had the sorcerer's soul sealed within it, and now that it has become a vengeful spirit, it is going to attack anything within range. He warns Noah to stand back, but he knows exactly how to deal with this thing, so he raises his sword and hits it with a water slash at full strength. As a result, the spirit is completely destroyed, and Oscar is glad that the situation has been handled, but he is concerned that someone might have gotten hurt during the chaos. However, Noah tells him there's no need to worry about that since he made sure to aim his blast towards the sky. It is impressive that Noah was able to make the best decision when given so little time to think, but Oscar is more amazed by the fact that he defeated the spirit of a legendary sorcerer in one strike. Just then, a local shop owner named Alan approached the two of them and says he has a proposition for them. He explains that he has an artifact that he has been unable to use for a while now, but after seeing Noah's display of strength, he thinks he may be able to awaken it. Noah is intrigued, so he and Oscar follow Alan back to his shop where they are presented with a special ring. For most people, it doesn't do anything, but according to the rumors, it will awaken when someone worthy puts it on. It sounds like a classic scam, but Noah has nothing to lose, so he decides to try it, and to his surprise, the ring reacts to him and ends up forming powerful armor around him. Noah decides to get the ring since it has a myriad of defensive abilities, and on his way back, he gets an unexpected opportunity to test it out as the lone shark from before tries to attack him for revenge. The ring automatically creates a shield to defend Noah, and the guy gets tackled to the ground, so he won't be a problem now. Noah later heads to one of the singer's performances, and after attacking a noble, that lone shark is doomed, so the singer doesn't need to worry about him anymore. But it turns out that he wasn't the only troublemaker, because after the singer finishes her performance, two drunk dudes jump on stage and try to flirt with her. Noah steps in and runs them off, but he is getting tired of the constant trouble here, so he asks the owner to stop accepting customers like them. The owner agrees that it's a bit of a problem, but these are the only customers he has, so he can't afford to stay in business without them. In that case, Noah offers to buy the business outright and offers the owner a huge sack of coins. The singer approaches Noah to thank him for protecting her, and she's not sure how she could ever repay him, but Noah says that all he wants is to hear her sing, so he asks her to perform one more song for him. One morning, Noah is getting ready for the day when he receives news that dead Marley, the general of Holjoy, is here to visit him. Holjoy is one of the most promising lands within Noah's fief, so he agrees to meet with Marley and tells his maids to bring him inside. Marley greets him in the meeting room, but Noah tells him there's no need for such formalities and asks Marley to have a seat. Marley and Noah first met a year and a half ago, around when Marley was first appointed as the general of Holjoy, and speaking of which, Noah asks him how it's going. He recalls that Marley was given an imperial order to manage the flood control of the area, but by the look on his face, he can tell that things aren't going well on that front. Holjoy is a bountiful grain farmland that runs along a curved river, but this makes it prone to occasional flooding, which is why the emperor ordered funds to be provided for disaster relief. Marley explains that he hasn't been able to make any significant changes, and the problem main reason is that the Minister of Finance keeps finding excuses to avoid dispersing the necessary funds. Noah is incredibly displeased when he hears this, since it sounds like a clear-cut case of misappropriation of national funds, so he asks Marley to come with him, because they are going to pay the minister a little visit. A little while later, Noah pays the Minister of Finance a visit over lunch, and the minister is just as far and greasy as Noah expected. The minister initially tries to flatter Noah, but he gets straight to the point and asks him why he hasn't given Marley the funds needed to manage the flooding in Holjoy. The minister remains calm and tells Noah he has a very good reason for that, but Noah cuts him off and tells him he had better not be looking down on him because he is a kid. After all, belittling a prince is an executable offense. The minister is now starting to get a little nervous, so he quickly explains that during last year's flood, the emperor generously granted Holjoy a tax exemption, so he thought it would only be fair for Holjoy to use the money they saved to fix the flooding this year. That's the most BS statement Noah has heard in his 6 short years of life in this world, so he asks the minister if he takes him from a fool or something. It is clear that the exemption was granted because Holjoy didn't have any money to pay taxes last year, so for the minister to speak as though Holjoy still has that money is an insult to Noah's intelligence. The minister realizes he's in hot water now, so he frantically thinks of another excuse and then tells Noah that the reason he can't hand over the flood money is because he needs it for the emperor. He thinks that by using the emperor's name, Noah won't be able to argue with him anymore. But his excuse was that the emperor is getting pretty old, so he wants to build a royal villa for him. And this is too much for Noah to handle. He tells the minister that he has just committed a grave crime because not only did he call the emperor an old man, he also used his name as a means to cover up his scheme, and to make it all worse. His excuse was something as dumb as, "There's a territory flooding, but I need to use the money to build a villa." The minister begins begging for forgiveness because he realizes how badly he just messed up, but Noah tells him that if he doesn't want the emperor to hear about this, then he had better hand over the funds at once. The minister runs off in a panic to do as Noah instructed, and it looks like the matter has officially been resolved, so Marley thanks Noah for his help. He also apologizes for getting Noah involved in a situation like this, but he had no other choice since there was no way he could have handled the prime minister on his own. As Noah prepares to return home, he suddenly receives a message stating that the emperor wants to have a meeting with him. Noah is surprised since it's rare for his dad to summon him out of nowhere, but it must be important, so Noah drops everything and heads over to his father's castle. Upon arrival, Noah greets the emperor, but he tells Noah there's no need to be so formal around him. First off, he wants to congratulate Noah for doing such a good job dealing with the Minister of Finance. Noah is surprised that the emperor already knows about that when it literally happened a couple of minutes ago. But he is told that information is one of the strongest weapons one can wield, and as the emperor, his information network is unmatched. Noah appreciates his father's praise, but he tells him he was only doing what he thought was right. Even so, the Emperor is impressed that Noah can see past deception so easily despite only being 6 years old. He also heard about how Noah mastered Leviathan's power in such a short amount of time, and it is truly a remarkable feat considering the dark nature of the sword. Noah is well aware how dark Leviathan can be, since it definitely would have killed all those people at the party if he hadn't stopped it. But even though the sword is powerful, Noah hasn't really learned how to properly wield a sword yet, which is why the Emperor prepared an instructor for him. This is Damian Noble, and he is the Empire's greatest swordsman, whom none have been able to defeat, and the Emperor wants Noah to learn as much as he can from him. Noah agrees to the arrangement, but before any formal lessons begin, Damian says he would like to have a friendly duel with Noah. The Emperor doesn't think that would be fair since Noah doesn't know how to fight with a sword, but Damian assures him that this is just going to be a simple test to see how much potential Noah possesses. The Emperor eventually agrees to the duel, so Damian raises his sword and tells Noah to attack him in any way he wants, so Noah grabs hold of Leviathan and charges at Damian. As he fights, Noah can feel the memories and skills of the previous user of Leviathan flowing into him, so his swordplay is growing sharper by the minute. He and Damian eventually lock swords, and just when Damian thinks he's got the upper hand, Noah swipes his sword upwards, disarming the greatest swordsman in the Empire and leaving both Damian and the Emperor speechless. Noah possesses the skills of a sword master, so there is nothing left for him to be taught. The Emperor is astonished by the fact that the greatest swordsman just lost to a 6-year-old. He's still really proud of his boy for accomplishing something so great. As a reward, he offers to make Noah the head of this year's Knight Selection exam, and Noah is greatly honored by the opportunity. The Knight Selection exam is an annual event involving participants from all corners of the world. Within the Empire, military might is incredibly important. Fighters win their regional preliminaries, all gather in the capital for one final battle, and the one who emerges victorious earns the title of Knight. The first job of a newly appointed Knight is to become the subordinate of the head judge of the tournament, and whenever Noah gains a talented subordinate, his stats go up, so he is excited to see what happens. The judging is usually done by either round robin or by elimination, but Noah has something different in mind for this year's tournament, so he asks for permission to cancel the regional preliminaries and hold the entire tournament in the capital. His reason is because he would like to see all the battles in person, and he wouldn't want any strong candidates to be excluded for arbitrary reasons, because he's not there to stop it. The Emperor tells him he is free to do whatever he wants, so Noah moves ahead with his plan. Back at home, Noah asks Zoe if her home village ever sends competitors for the Knight Selection exam. She confirms this, but adds that her village usually only sends one person in hopes of them making a name for themselves on the village's behalf. Noah informs her that he has decided to get rid of the regional preliminaries, so her village is free to send as many candidates as they wish, and Zoe is happy to hear that. But she tells Noah that there's still a big problem. Part of the reason her village only sends one candidate is because they can't afford the travel and lodging costs necessary to stay in the capital for the duration of the test. The entire village basically has to pool their money together to afford a single candidate, so sending more isn't really possible for them. However, Noah doesn't want talented people to be held back by a lack of finances, so he decides that he is going to cover the travel and lodging expenses for all candidates this year. That certainly is a wonderful idea, but paying for accommodations for that many people would cost an astronomical amount, and they don't have that kind of money to burn. However, Noah already has a plan in mind. He says he's going to buy all the vacant buildings in the area to house the candidates, and if that isn't enough, then he will have a hostel built to accommodate them. That way, the money spent will still have value even after the tournament is over. As for food, he plans to consult all the merchants he has connections with to find the best deal. He eventually calls a meeting with Byron and asks for an estimated cost for his plan. However, when Byron provides an estimate, he is caught off guard because the price is way too low. There's no way Byron could make a profit with numbers like these, but Byron says it's not a problem since he just wants to be of use to the prince. Yeah, Noah isn't falling for that. He knows merchants never give stuff away for free, so he asks Byron to come out with it and state whatever it is that he wants in exchange. Byron is surprised that Noah knows so much about how business works when he is so young, but since that's the case, there's no point in trying to hide it anymore. He talks about how there is a selection process for castle staff, and he was hoping that Noah could pull a few strings so one of Byron's servants could be hired. That way, if any important business were to go down within the castle walls, Byron would be one of the first to hear about it. Noah agrees to the terms, and as a display of sincerity, Byron swears to fully support Noah and Noah alone within the royal family. Gaining Byron as a subordinate has really boosted his stats, but while checking his stat window, he realizes that his water magic stat just went down by 1 rank. His high water stat comes from the territory he owns, so this must mean that something has gone wrong in Almeria. He immediately rushes to meet with his father to inform him that something has happened in Almeria, and while the king does believe him, he asks Noah how he could possibly know that. Noah can't exactly reveal his stat screen, so he keeps his answer vague and says he has been noticing signs for a while now. This apparently satisfies the emperor's curiosity, goes on to talk about the situation, and that's when Noah finds out that there is a rebellion going on there. The emperor asks Noah if he would like to handle the matter personally, but after giving it some thought, Noah says he doesn't want to do it. Most nobles would jump at the chance to claim glory in battle, but he believes Henry would be a better choice since he has more experience with this kind of situation. Later that night, Henry and Noah are riding in a carriage together, and Henry asks him if he's sure about this since with the way this nation operates, he could have significantly raised his status by gaining a great achievement in battle. Noah explains that he isn't skilled enough to be deployed into a battle, and even if he did manage to find a way to survive, many of his soldiers would likely die in vain, and that's something he would like to avoid. All of a sudden, Leviathan warns Noah of hostile intent up ahead, so he tells the driver to stop the carriage. He knows it must be the rebels attempting to assassinate him, and since it's him they are after, he takes off running to get as far away as possible from Henry. Just then, 4 water jets shoot up from the ground, and they all converge on Noah as the rebels show themselves, but Noah has defended himself with his shield, so he is still perfectly fine. The rebels then try to jump Noah, but he is far too skilled for them to handle, so Noah easily takes them down all in a matter of seconds. Henry is amazed by how easily Noah was able to take the rebels down, but he thinks it's a shame that they didn't get to interrogate any of them since they could have gotten some valuable information. That's when Noah informs him that the rebels are actually still alive. All he did was knock them out, so Henry is free to interrogate them as much as he wants. Later on, Noah had heard that the Almerian rebels consist mainly of cavalry, but Almeria doesn't have any horse farm, so the rebels must be getting their horses and supplies from outside the territory, and knowing that gave Noah an idea. He calls for Byron and orders him to buy all of the horse feed in the regions surrounding Almeria. This way, they will run out of food for their horses sooner or later, and they should make it a lot easier for Henry to wipe out the rebellion. Later on, Noah meets with the emperor, and according to the assassins Noah captured, it looks like the rebels only wanted to kidnap him to use him as a bargaining chip. However, considering how easily they admitted to that, Noah thinks they might be hiding something. The king feels the same way, but he assures Noah he has his ways when it comes to getting prisoners to talk. Noah knows that probably means the captives are going to be getting the pair of anguish and despair, but he'd rather not get involved with that, so he says he will leave the torturing to his father. The emperor then congratulates Noah for doing such a good job defending himself, because if he had been captured, the empire would have been forced to make a tough decision. He also commends Noah for his brilliant idea to starve the rebels' horses, but Noah has no idea how the emperor found out about that when he literally just gave the order. The emperor goes on to explain that anyone can come up with a starvation tactic, but it takes a real genius to realize that doing such a move would have caused the rebels to attack the surrounding people, so he is really proud of Noah. A little while later, Noah is out on a walk when Byron comes to meet him, and he seems to be done with the task Noah entrusted him with. He says it will be easy for them to acquire all the horse feed before the rebels could buy it, but the leader of the rebels, Carfun, is extremely tenacious and will do whatever it takes to achieve his goal, so he warns Noah to be careful. Just then, Zoe comes up to Noah because there's apparently a wounded man standing at the gate, and he claims to have an important report to give Noah. Noah is intrigued, so he heads to the gate to meet the man and finds out that he is a knight who works in Almeria. He informs Noah that his superior just recently started a rebellion in Almeria, and he was ordered to join the rebellion forces, but he couldn't go along with it, so he fled to report to Noah. Noah already knew about the rebellion, but he still thanks the knight for informing him of it and asks his maid to treat his wounds. He also decided to give the knight a reward of 1,000 reen for his loyalty, but Byron is surprised that Noah would go to such lengths when the information the knight provided isn't even useful anymore. Noah is aware of that, but the fact that the knight chose to come all the way here to relay that information, even though he knew he would be putting his life in danger, shows true loyalty, and Noah wants to reward him for that. A little while later, Noah is in his office filing some paperwork when all of a sudden, Zoe walks in, and she looks really nervous. She collapses on the floor and hands Noah a pouch of coins, but Noah isn't sure what all this is about, so he asks her what's going on. She tells him that some random dude just handed her this bag of money and told her to pour a sleeping drug into Noah's tea so they could kidnap him, so she came to snitch. Noah assumes it must be the rebels trying to get to him again, but he wonders why Zoe even bothered accepting the poison and money in the first place. She tells Noah that she could never betray him after everything he has done for her, but they threatened to kill her if she didn't accept the job, so she had no choice but to pretend to go along with it. Noah understands the situation, and he is grateful that Zoe didn't sell him out, so he offers her a bonus check of 5,000 reen as a reward, 10 times the amount that the rebels tried to bribe her with. Zoe initially tries to refuse since she doesn't think it would be right to accept this much money from him, but Noah tells her to just take it because he has a favor he'd like her to do for him. Zoe says she's willing to do anything for him, but then Noah tells her he's going to voluntarily chug the sleeping drug, and after he's asleep, he wants her to let the rebels take him. Zoe thinks this is way too risky, but she can't go against Noah's orders, so she does as he says, and a few hours later, Noah finds himself tied up in the back of a carriage. This is pretty much what he expected to happen, which is why he hid the shrunken Leviathan in his ear so the rebels wouldn't take it away. Thankfully, he still has his ring on, so he uses its ability to cut the ropes, and once he is free, he asks Leviathan to show him what happened while he was unconscious. Basically, after drinking the drug tea, the rebels broke in and carried Noah's body away before loading him into this carriage and riding off into the forest. They seem to have stopped to take a break, so Noah thinks this is the perfect time to take action and climbs out of the carriage to confront them. The rebels aren't worried at first when they see that Noah has broken free, because they assume there's no way a kid could possibly defeat all of them. However, Noah begins effortlessly cutting them down one after the other, and in no time, he's the only one left standing. A few moments later, Noah notices a group of knights approaching, and Zoe is here as well. He asks her what all this is supposed to be, so she explains that even though everything went according to Noah's plan, she was still worried, so she contacted the knights and organized a rescue operation for Noah. Noah appreciates the consideration, but there isn't really much to do now, so he just asks the knights to take care of the criminals he just took care of. The knights do as they are told, but while moving the bodies, one of them drops a dagger, and Noah notices something strange about it, so he orders everyone to stay back while he takes a closer look. He can sense an unbelievable amount of malice coming from this thing, and it's pretty clear that it was cursed by someone. But curses go both ways, and Noah can now use this to track down the owner. He readies Leviathan and prepares to use its power to settle the score once and for all. A massive amount of energy is launched into the air, and before long, it reaches the stratosphere, before redirecting itself towards a specific target. The target in question is Karfun, the leader of the rebels, and before he even knows what hit him, he gets obliterated. The next morning, the Emperor calls Noah into a meeting to tell him how proud he is. He just learned that the leader of the rebels got his head blown off by an intercontinental sword strike, and Noah is just glad it worked because he had no idea if it actually hit Karfun or not last night. With the rebel leader dead, the rest of the rebels quickly descended into chaos, and before long, Henry managed to completely suppress them. Once every single participant in the rebellion has been captured, a meeting is held to announce the punishment that they will face for their crime. The Emperor is really pissed about the fact that those people attempted to seize Noah's land, so he orders that they all be drawn and quartered. And everyone begins cheering for the Emperor's decision because they wouldn't dare to question him, but Noah actually has something to say. He tells his father that he doesn't think drawing and quartering the offenders is the best course of action here, and it's not because he thinks they should be forgiven or anything, but the imperial law has punishments clearly laid out for cases of rebellion. The leaders of the rebellion are to be hanged, while those who participated are to be beheaded. The Emperor thinks a painless death is far too good for those people, but regardless, Noah tells him that even if he is the Emperor, he still needs to follow imperial law, otherwise, he would be damaging the integrity of the royal family. The Emperor realizes that Noah is right about this, but he says he won't be satisfied if the culprits receive a tame punishment, so he orders that they should be punished to the fullest extent of the law, with no lenience. Noah has no objections to this, so the Emperor makes it official, and he orders the Prime Minister to ensure that the punishments are carried out correctly. All the nobles in the crowd were silent at first since they didn't know how the Emperor would respond to Noah's brazen attitude, but now that they know that the Emperor is on Noah's side, they all begin praising him for his exemplary bravery. Now that the hearing is over, the Emperor stands up from his throne and approaches Noah to thank him for being so forthcoming earlier since he prevented him from sullying the Empire's good name, and he says he plans to reward him for his effort. He declared that he will be granting Noah a title since any child is capable of standing up to their father, but the wisdom to do so at the right time is a talent that is worth recognizing. Thus, the Emperor announces that Noah will hereby be known as the Wise Prince, which is a great honor since it is an extremely rare title. In all honesty, if Noah were a few years older, the Emperor might have considered making him the crown prince right here and now, but he is still far too young for such a station. so this is the best he is going to get for now. That aside, the Emperor recalls that the knight selection exam is going to be starting soon, so he asks Noah if he has decided how he intends to judge it, and as a matter of fact, Noah has a foolproof plan for the event, but he would rather share the details in private, so he asks the Emperor to wait till later. After the hearing is officially over, Noah brings the Emperor out into the garden and has 4 servants stand around with buckets of water while he sips a cup of tea. When he gives the signal, all 4 servants attempt to throw the water on him, but Noah effortlessly uses his ring shield to block each and every last drop. This is how he plans to judge the candidates of the selection exam. He will have them attack him one by one and then judge their performance based on how close they get to actually hitting him. The Emperor is impressed since this method takes a lot of the stress of judging off Noah while also making sure it is fair and equal. However, he is a little worried about the risks since if one of the participants happens to be strong enough to break through Noah's shield, then he might get seriously hurt. Noah is aware of the risks, but he assures his father that everything is going to be fine because he has measures in place for such an occurrence. Later on, the Emperor heads to the royal treasury with the Prime Minister, and along the way, the Prime Minister asks him if he's sure it was a good idea to openly admit that he thinks Noah is a good candidate for his successor like that. The Emperor sees nothing wrong with it since it's pretty obvious that Noah is a genius. After all, he took out an enemy leader at his age without ever so much as setting foot on a battlefield, and that is a feat worthy of recognition. There's also the fact that the magic sword in his possession holds unimaginable power, and even now, part of that power remains sealed because it would be too dangerous for an ordinary person to wield, but something tells the Emperor that Noah could probably handle it. The day of the knight selection tournament finally arrives, and everyone has been informed of the rules of this tournament. Noah is going to be sitting in his chair all day, and one by one, each knight candidate is meant to come up and attack him. His shield is more than enough to stop their attacks, so no one has managed to get anywhere close to actually hitting Noah yet. Even magic is completely ineffective against his defenses, so it looks like no one stands a chance here. Time goes by, and it is time for the final contestant for the day, so Shirley steps out onto the stage and draws her sword before charging at Noah with full force. Noah's shield activates as intended, but Shirley's sword actually manages to cut through it, which Noah really wasn't expecting to happen, so he ends up getting pierced in the arm a little. The guards immediately apprehend Shirley for daring to injure the prince, but Noah tells them to release her immediately because attacking him was the whole point of the contest, and he wouldn't have set it up like this if he wasn't willing to accept a few injuries as a result. Anyway, since Shirley managed to break through his defenses, Noah announces that she has passed his test. Noah later invited her to come back to his quarters, and once they arrived, she nervously asked him what he meant when he said she passed his test. She assumes that means Noah is going to punish her in some way for harming him, but Noah tells her he really holds no grudge against her for what happened. In fact, he would like her to attack him one more time. Shirley is still a bit nervous and isn't sure what to do, but Noah reminds her that she is a knight, and her job as a knight is to follow his orders regardless of what they may be, so she picks up her sword and charges at Noah. His shield activates as expected, but unlike last time, no matter how hard Shirley pushes, she is unable to break through. Noah explains that he could have stopped her during the contest if he wanted to, but he wanted to see if she was the type of knight who would follow through on her orders to attack regardless of the situation. Most people would have held back because they were scared of hurting Noah, but she charged in at full force, and that's the kind of commitment Noah wants. Shirley swears her undying loyalty to Noah, and as he takes a look at his stat screen, he realizes that having her as a subordinate just gave him a significant boost. Just then, Zoe comes in with a doctor to treat Noah's wound since it still needs to be taken care of, and thankfully, Shirley's strike didn't hit any bones or major arteries, so the doctor is able to patch Noah up fairly quickly. Shirley is amazed because she had no idea that injuries could be treated in such a manner, especially since there are no doctors in her village. Noah is surprised to learn of this, so he asks Shirley what the people in her village usually do when one of them gets sick. Shirley explains that they kind of just leave it like that and hope it gets better on its own, which usually doesn't end well. Noah can't just leave things as they are, so he asks the doctor what's the quickest way to become a doctor, and he is told that one would have to become an apprentice first. Thus, Noah turns to Shirley and tells her to gather the most clever and hardworking people from her village and bring them to him because he's going to have the doctor take them on as apprentices. He assures her that all expenses will be covered, so she doesn't need to worry about that, and Shirley is very grateful for Noah's consideration. Now that Shirley is one of Noah's knights, she lives in the mansion, so the next morning, she wakes up and gets dressed for her duties. While heading downstairs, she runs into Zoe, so she greets her, and mentions that she could barely get any sleep last night because she isn't used to sleeping in such a big room. She's honestly surprised by how well taken care of the servants here are, and it's clear that they all love Noah more than anyone else because he treats them well. Among all the princes, it is widely known that Noah is by far the kindest, which isn't exactly hard since most royals do tend to be jerks. Still, Noah is loved because he doesn't let his status change the way he treats others. In fact, there are countless maidens who would kill for the chance to become Noah's bride, and the other maids start teasing Zoe because they know she loves Noah the most of all, but Zoe bashfully denies any romantic feelings and says she just wants to be useful to Noah, and Shirley feels the same way. Later that day, Noah is busy stamping some documents with Shirley by his side, and a few moments later, a knight comes to inform Noah that the list of knight candidates that he chose have been approved. Noah thanks the knight for his work and tells him he may go now, but he asks Shirley to escort him as he leaves. Shirley still isn't used to the idea that she is now a high-ranking knight herself, so she bows to thank the knight for paying a visit, but the knight tells her that it isn't necessary because she is technically above him now. He can tell that Shirley is going to make a fine knight, but before he leaves, he gives her a piece of advice and tells her she's got a good thing going as Noah's knight, so she had better not mess it up. Late that night, Noah throws a party and has his favorite singer perform. The party is to commemorate his success regarding the knight's selection competition, and Noah invited Marley here as thanks for all the efforts he put into making it a success. He also informs Marley that all the merchant groups who have ties with him are currently present in this room, so he would do well to establish good ties with all of them because it will help his own business grow. The singer's performance soon ends, and Noah is greatly pleased by it, but all of a sudden, Zoe comes up to him holding a letter, and she says it was addressed to Noah. But she's not sure what it's about. Noah takes a look at the letter out of curiosity, but he isn't sure what it's supposed to mean either. He asks who delivered the letter, but apparently, the guy responsible ran away from the guards after dropping the letter off, so there's no way of knowing who's behind this. Noah decides to open the letter to see what's inside, but Shirley warns him not to do that, because it could be a trap of some kind. Noah is aware of the potential risks, but since Leviathan isn't reacting, he is certain that the letter isn't going to be life-threatening. He opens the letter and pulls out a small piece of paper which states that the remnants of the Almerian rebels have begun to make their move. Zoe is surprised that the rebels haven't given up yet and wonders what they could be planning, but Noah has no idea. The letter states that the person responsible for delivering it has returned to Almeria to act as an undercover spy for him, and Noah assumes the undercover agent in question must be that knight who came to inform him of the rebellion not long ago. Zoe thinks Noah is right since that man really did seem to admire Noah a great deal, so he's going out of his way to assist to show his respect. Shirley thinks this is great news, but Noah actually tells her this is terrible, because that knight has absolutely no real spy training, so if he goes around trying to act as a spy, he's going to get himself caught in no time. When that happens, he is bound to be either tortured or killed, and Noah can't let that happen, so he needs to do something. Henry is likely already near the Almeria territory, so Noah plans to ask him for help, but there's no guarantee that he will make it in time. A little while later, Noah receives a response letter from Henry, and he apparently did his best to save the knight, but by the time he got there, the knight had already been discovered and tortured for information. Noah wishes the knight had just told the rebels everything he knew, because it's not like he had much useful information to begin with, but instead, the knight remained absolutely silent as they tortured him, and as a result, he was left in critical condition. By the time Henry arrived, the knight was still unconscious, but thankfully alive. However, there's no guarantee that he will survive given his injuries. Noah feels responsible for this since if he had simply maintained an information network for himself, the knight wouldn't have felt the need to put himself in danger to acquire that info for Noah. He turns to Zoe and orders her to send a letter to Almeria, and tell the one in charge to spare no expense when it comes to treating the knight, because Noah will reimburse them for all costs incurred. The next day, Noah heads out into the market with Shirley as his guard, and she is completely amazed because she has never seen so much stuff in one place before. However, Noah reminds her that she's on the clock, so this is no time for her to get distracted. Shirley apologizes and runs to catch up to Noah before asking him why he chose to come to the market today, and Noah informs her that he's here to get a gift for Henry as thanks for suppressing the rebellion in his territory. They head into one of the shops, and Noah explains that he is looking for a good gift for his brother, so the owner brings out an assortment of all the fancy items he has in stock. They are all quite nice, but none of them really seems to impress Noah until he catches a glimpse of one item in particular. The owner reveals that the item in question is a beautiful sculpture made entirely out of glass by a skilled artisan, but as the art of creating glass sculptures is difficult to learn, only 2 statues like this exist in the world. Noah thinks this would be the perfect gift to get for Henry, so he tells the owner he wants to buy it and offers him $10,000 as payment. A few moments later, Henry happens to walk into the shop because he heard the owner here has a special treasure in stock, but he goes completely silent when he sees it for himself. He asks the owner if this is really an authentic glass sculpture, and the owner confirms this, but instead of being happy, Henry actually seems upset. There are only 2 of these sculptures in existence, but he never thought a random shop owner would be able to find the second one. Noah asks Henry if he knows where the first statue is, and that's when Henry reveals that he already owns the first one. That pretty much throws a wrench in Noah's plan to give him this as a gift, but he does have an idea. He could just give Henry the second statue as planned, but a 2-of-a-kind statue is naturally worth less than a 1-of-a-kind, so Noah takes the second statue and smashes it to pieces right there, because now, Henry's statue will be 1-of-a-kind, and that's going to make it several times more valuable than it already was. Henry is surprised that Noah was able to understand such a complex concept, but he is grateful for Noah's consideration and promises to return the favor somehow. As Noah is returning home for the day, Shirley asks him if it was really necessary to destroy such a valuable treasure, since he still had to pay for it in the end. But Noah tells her it doesn't really matter because it was just an object. He says the only treasure he is truly concerned about is the people who would wholeheartedly devote themselves to him. And to him, Shirley is one of his most important treasures. She has learned a lot about him over the past few days, and she now knows without a doubt that she wants to follow Noah for the rest of her life. 6 years go by, and Noah has grown into a confident 12-year-old prince, meaning he is older, stronger, and ready to do even more amazing things. Since Noah just turned 12, countless people seeking to earn his favor have been showing up to drop off gifts for him, and the line is so long that it has literally been going 3 days straight at this point. It would be one thing if Noah were just receiving the gifts, but he is taking care to accurately note down the names of the people who delivered gifts to him so he can return the favor eventually. And that's a time-consuming process. Within the past few years, Noah has been officially recognized for mastering the power of Leviathan, and by direct imperial order, he was stationed at the Ministry of Military Affairs, which means he has a lot of authority in this department. He asks Henry if there's something he wanted to discuss, so Henry tells him that he actually received an imperial order recently, instructing him to let Reese over here command an army to suppress the rebellion on the southern border. If the barbarians there are shown any lenience, they go on a rampage, so the plan is to dispatch an army there to demonstrate how superior the Empire's military strength is to theirs, which is where Reese comes in. Reese is a decorated veteran with many acts of valor under his belt, so there's no doubt that among all of Henry's knights, Reese is especially talented, so there should be no problem with sending him. But before any of that, Noah has an important question to ask him. He wants to know how many soldiers Reese actually has. Hearing this makes Henry wonder what Noah is talking about. So Noah explains that armies receive funding based on the number of troops they report. So it's pretty common for generals to bolster their numbers a bit by registering non-combatants or merchants who can't fight and keeping the excess money. Reese begins apologizing because that's exactly what he has been doing, and Henry is about to fly into a fit of rage, but Noah stops him and explains that what Reese did isn't actually a big deal. Sure, he may have falsely stated that they have more soldiers than they really do, but that can work in their favor since having more soldiers on paper acts as a deterrent to most, but in this case, it is a bit of a hindrance since the Emperor is demanding an absolute victory against the rebels, and it makes it hard to plan for that if he doesn't know how many real soldiers there are, hence why he asked the question earlier. Rice explains that he has around 2,000 actual soldiers and Noah appreciates his honesty, so he writes a letter addressed to the Minister of Military Affairs and tells Rice to deliver this to him. The letter is a request for 2,000 men's worth of supplies, plus a little extra for Reese to pocket, but in exchange, Noah tells him that failure will not be tolerated. Later that day, Noah and Henry are heading back home in their carriages, and Henry is impressed by how Noah masterfully both threatened Reese by exposing his wrongdoing and motivated him by agreeing to let him have the extra money anyway. Though it's a shame Noah hasn't gotten to experience any war yet, because a few war achievements under his belt would make him even more impressive than he already is. However, since he is still young, he is pretty much forbidden from participating in wars. Noah is more than capable of handling himself, but the rule stems from the fact that most royal babies end up dying within their first year, and this isn't because of some kind of plague or anything. It's mostly because of the other princes trying to get rid of their competition by spawn camping. But Henry isn't like the others and actually cares about his family members quite a bit. He starts telling Noah about a few of his war stories, but while he is talking, a little girl in rags runs out of an alleyway and onto the road. This startles the horses and causes them to stop, so Henry asks what's going on, and the little girl begs for help. A moment later, another group of children comes running out of the alley, followed by a bunch of men chasing after them, The men grab the kids and attempt to drag them away, but Noah steps in and demands that they stop. It's clear that the children are slaves, and slavery isn't illegal in this nation, so he can't arrest them for the sole act of enslaving children, but he can punish them for doing so without registration, so he demands to see their documents. The men have no documents to speak of, so even though they can clearly see that Noah just stepped out of a carriage with a royal insignia, instead of just running away, they decide to attack him. As a result, Noah proceeds to absolutely mop the floor with the goons, though he makes sure not to kill them outright. He then goes over to the children and asks if those men were trying to sell them off as slaves, which all the children tearfully confirm. But a moment later, a wrinkly old man walks out from the alley and tells Noah that there's nothing wrong with what he has been doing because he works for Prince Gilbert. Even if unregistered slave trading is illegal, if this dude really does have Gilbert's backing, then there's nothing Noah can do in this situation, and knowing Gilbert, he probably did hire the man to traffic the children. However, Noah has the perfect solution to this problem. He says out loud, "Nah, you're lying," and knocks the man out before he could provide any proof of his connection to Gilbert. This way, he gets to save the children, and he has plausible deniability in case he is accused of disrespecting Gilbert's authority. In the meantime, he plans to take the children back to his mansion so he can listen to their stories, and as for the men, he will drop them off at Gilbert's house so he can handle them. Later that night, Albert and Gilbert are having dinner together when Noah receives a message from Gilbert. It is apparently thanking him for capturing those two, and claims that Gilbert had nothing to do with them because he would never sanction the illegal trafficking of kids. Normally, the criminals would be taken in for questioning, but unfortunately, while no one was looking, they all happened to take their own lives at the same time. Noah isn't stupid, so he knows exactly what Gilbert is trying to do. He killed those child traffickers so they couldn't leak any info about the Gilbert files that would get tracked back to him or his island. Henry isn't surprised since he has known for a while that Gilbert is involved in many deplorable acts, but since Gilbert is the first prince, he has too much authority for Henry to do anything about it. Noah understands why Gilbert is doing it, because even though he's the first prince, because he's the son of a concubine, he isn't allowed to inherit the throne. So he is probably venting his frustrations in any way he can. Henry is impressed that Noah was able to figure that out so quickly when he has rarely spoken to Gilbert, but he doesn't think it's particularly difficult to figure out given what they already know. But as things stand, Gilbert is still pretty much untouchable. The best Noah can do in the meantime is pull a few strings to make sure that the kids that he rescued won't have to worry about being sold off anymore. He tells them they are all free to go, but the kids don't seem all too excited because they don't actually have anywhere to go in the first place. The children were all initially sold by their families for various reasons, so if they return home, they would likely end up being sold off as slaves again. Noah doesn't want to leave them to such an unfortunate fate, so he announces that he is willing to take all of them in and asks Dylan to prepare accommodations for them. He also promises that any of the kids who wish to study will be given full support to do so. The kids ask if this means Noah intends to buy them, but he clarifies that he doesn't want slaves, he wants loyal subordinates, so if any of them want to leave for any reason at any time, he will not stop them. Being treated so kindly is a completely foreign concept to the kids, so they aren't sure how to respond, but they are also very grateful to Noah, so they thank him before being led away by Dylan to get cleaned up. With this, the kids should be able to live happy lives from now on, and seeing that puts a smile on Noah's face, but just then, he remembers that he still has something he needs to do. The next day, Evelyn comes to inform that all the gifts for his birthday have been received and cataloged, but he tells her that's not important right now because he has something he needs to talk to her about. He tells her he's firing her as a maid, but not because she did anything wrong. He tells her he wants her to become the administrator of a region in Almeria, and it is a true honor since this makes her a government official. It is natural that Noah wouldn't be able to rule over such a large area by himself, which is why he has to assign administrators to different regions to manage affairs. He has been watching Evelyn for a number of years now, and he is certain that she is the most clever among all his maids, so she would be perfect for the task. Evelyn is grateful that Noah thinks so highly of her, but she tells him she would much rather stay here and keep working for Noah because she wants to be of service to him. However, Noah tells her that she would be doing him a great service by accepting the position, because if she does a good job, then it will be known throughout the kingdom that Noah is an excellent judge of character. So even if she isn't here at the mansion, she will still be helping Noah in her own way. Evelyn is happy to help in whatever way she can, so she agrees to act as one of Noah's administrators, and Shirley is impressed by how nurturing Noah is when dealing with his subordinates. He is infinitely better than Gilbert in that department, but Noah tells her she probably shouldn't say stuff like that out loud since it could get her in trouble. A little while later, Noah is summoned to a meeting with the Emperor to discuss the incident with those child traffickers. The narrative Gilbert used was that they were scoundrels using his name without his permission, and he had nothing to do with it. Noah knows that's not true, but he has no proof to go against what Gilbert has claimed, so he can't do much right now, especially since all the criminals involved are already dead. Speaking of the criminals, the Emperor asks Noah if he knows what the punishment for illegal slave trading is. Noah recalls that according to the law, the ringleader is to have his arm cut off, and anyone else involved will be involuntarily conscripted into the army, and the Emperor tells him he is correct. He then mentions that he heard the criminals attacked him when he confronted them, but since Noah was far more skilled than they were, he suffered no harm. The king is fairly certain that things wouldn't have played out as well for him if he had been in Noah's shoes, because he would have been undercover to hide his identity as emperor, and probably would have hesitated to reveal himself, potentially leaving himself open to injury. The prime minister jokes that if one of the criminals really were to injure the emperor, it would be an imperial crime warranting the death penalty, but Noah interrupts and tells him he's wrong. According to the law, if a royal fails to identify themselves as such, then no acts committed against them can be classified as imperial crimes because the perpetrator was unaware of their status. Noah is correct, but he is a little worried that he might have overstepped his bounds, since correcting the prime minister in front of so many people might be seen as rude. But to his surprise, both the emperor and the prime minister start laughing because they had made a little bet on whether Noah would correct the mistake or not. The emperor has always known Noah has a strong sense of justice, so he was just testing to see whether he would be able to point out someone misquoting the law. And now that he knows Noah's sense of justice is untainted, the emperor then gets up and announces before everyone present that he is hereby appointing Noah as the new minister of justice. Later on, Noah arrives at the Ministry of Justice and he is introduced to Vinny, the vice minister of justice. Noah can see that Vinny is young and talented, so he asks him to explain a general outline of what his duties are as the minister of justice. Vinny explains that the Ministry of Justice is in charge of coordinating all the courthouses across the country, but it also tries many cases that occur in the capital. So Noah will be expected to act as a judge. Noah was pretty much expecting that to be the case, but he asked Vinny if he also judges cases from time to time. Vinny says it depends on the situation, but he does handle a case or two from time to time. And hearing that, Noah moves on to his next question and asks Vinny how many bribes he accepts. Vinny is a little shocked and doesn't know how to answer, but Noah assures him that he isn't in any kind of trouble. He simply wants to understand the current situation at the Ministry of Justice, so if he admits to anything, then Noah won't hold it against him. Vinny understands and admits that he does indeed accept bribes, usually around a few hundred reen a year, but that's because he has a personal rule about not accepting certain kinds of bribes. Most other judges have no such rule, so they end up accepting 10 times the number of bribes that he does. Noah is intrigued and asks Vinny what this rule he speaks of is, so Vinny explains that he does not accept bribes for cases related to murder. Not necessarily because he is against the idea, but because it would be too easy to expose. After all, if he sets the murderer free, the bereaved would know that he accepted a bribe and might come after him for revenge later on, so he decided that it was better to keep his bribes to cases that are low stakes. Noah understands, so he takes out a piece of paper and writes a check to Vinny for 5,000 reen. He explains that assuming Vinny accepts 500 reen in bribes per year, then this should cover 10 times that amount, so from now on, he wants Vinny to stop accepting bribes. Vinny is amazed by how rational Noah is, and he can now see why the king gave him the title of wise prince at such a young age. He decides right there and then he wants to do right by Noah, so he tells him he doesn't need the extra money. He agrees to stop taking bribes altogether, and in exchange, all he wants is to serve Noah faithfully from now on. Normally, Noah would be suspicious of ulterior motives from Vinny, but he looks at his stats screen and realizes that he received a boost from Vinny swearing his loyalty to him, so he must have been sincere in his declaration. Later on, Noah is having dinner with Oscar at his mansion, and Oscar can tell that Noah is a little suspicious, but he assures him that this is just a celebration to congratulate him on being named the Minister of Justice. After all, after Henry, Noah is the second prince to be named a minister. Noah appreciates the gesture, but he still can't help but find the whole thing odd, because in Henry's case, he earned the minister position after stopping the rebellion. But Noah doesn't have any notable accomplishments that would warrant being given such a title, so he thinks the emperor might have something else in mind. He turns to Oscar and asks him if he recalls the story of the time the empire nearly collapsed. As the story goes, it happens because of the previous rule that only the first prince could inherit the throne, and while this may seem normal, it actually led to a lot of unrest because the rest of the royal family, knowing they would never have to bear the responsibility, chose to spend all their time frolicking about without a care in the world. Understandably, that didn't go very well. So from then on, a new rule was made where each prince would receive a fief at birth, and whoever performed the best at their duties would be named Crown Prince. Just then, Oscar realizes what Noah is trying to say, so he stands up abruptly and asks if the Emperor is really thinking of making Noah the Crown Prince. Noah says he isn't sure about it, but it certainly is a possibility. However, a moment later, one of Oscar's men comes to inform him that the Emperor is planning on putting him in charge of the Ministry of Finance tomorrow morning, and that confirms Noah's theory. The Emperor really is looking for someone to replace Albert as Crown Prince. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the kingdom, an operation is carried out by the royal knights to bust a group of people who have been plotting to overthrow the Emperor. The Emperor receives the news later that night, and from the interrogation, it seems the group was trying to get the Emperor to abdicate the throne in order to instate the Crown Prince, Albert. It's pretty clear that this was a ploy from Albert to seize the throne, but low-key, it's hard to blame him because he has been the Crown Prince for 30 years already, and his dad has no plans to retire. It is still a major crime to attempt an insurrection, but there's no real evidence linking Albert to the crime, so punishing him will be difficult. But as for the other people involved in the plot, they are definitely going to be executed for this. The next day, since Noah is in charge of the Ministry of Justice, the case is brought before him, and he is asked to decide on a punishment. It's a pretty straightforward case since all the people involved were caught red-handed plotting to overthrow the Emperor, but even though there's no direct evidence linking Albert to this case, it is still pretty clear that he was involved. After all, the people carrying out the plan were all members of Albert's inner circle. Vinny asks Noah what he plans to do, and normally, under imperial law, it is very rare for royalty to receive any punishment for the crimes they commit, but there is one exception to that rule, and that's in cases of insurrection. Here, the punishment is execution, whether you're a royal or a random bum. And even if a royal claims to have had no involvement in the plot, simply being aware of it without stopping it is enough to get them executed. Given how many of Albert's people were involved, it's practically impossible for him not to notice what was going on. If Noah really wanted to, he could charge Albert with treason and have him executed, but he knows that's not what the Emperor would want. After all, having it go public that one of the princes tried to seize the throne would be a national scandal, so instead, Noah decides to bend the rule a little. He later meets with the Emperor to discuss the sentence he came up with, and he explains that he plans to have everyone who was arrested on the scene executed with immediate effect. The fact that the Emperor hasn't already called Albert out means he has no intention of punishing him, but if one of Albert's accomplices were to snitch on him, then it would be really difficult to cover up the scandal, which is why Noah wants to get rid of them as soon as possible. The Emperor is impressed that Noah was able to deduce his intentions, even though he never actually said anything, so as a reward, he grants him a budget increase and tells him he has high hopes for him in the future. After that, Noah returns home, but as he is approaching, he sees two of his front gate guards lying on the ground severely wounded, and it's clear that something is going on. He goes out to check on them, but one is already dead, and the other just barely manages to warn Noah that the intruders who did this are still inside. Noah immediately runs in to handle the situation, and as he runs through the halls, he finds many of his men injured and lying on the ground. He eventually comes across one of the intruders as they are in the process of sliming out one of Noah's men. So Noah charges forward and proceeds to slice all his limbs down to the bone. The intruder attempts to kill himself by biting his own tongue off, but Noah stops him by stuffing some magic metal down his throat. 3 more intruders appear shortly thereafter, and they all attack Noah at once, but he is easily able to slice them down in less than a second. A few moments later, Vinny shows up looking for Noah, and he is relieved to see that Noah is fine, but the situation is still very grim. Though all the intruders have been killed, many of Noah's guards are in grave condition. Noah is shocked to learn that all the intruders were killed since normally they would be kept alive for questioning, but this means someone must be trying to cover up their involvement, which leads Noah to believe these men are related to Albert in some way. It will be a mess if Albert is found to be connected to this attack, so Noah needs to come up with an excuse to get rid of the people he stopped from offing themselves. Under imperial law, harming a member of the royal family is grounds for immediate execution, so Noah stabs himself in the abdomen and tells Vinny to report that the intruders did this to him, so they will be executed before they can snitch on Albert. A few minutes later, Noah's wound is being treated when Vinny comes up to inform him that the executions have been carried out as he instructed, and Noah is relieved to hear that because if Albert's assassination attempt came to light, it would be a stain on the name of the royal family. Later on, Noah is called into a meeting with the Emperor to discuss what happened, and the Emperor knows that there's no way a bunch of random intruders would be able to lay a finger on Noah, so he must have injured himself as an excuse to get rid of them. He knows why Noah did it, and he is proud of Noah for going so far as to wound himself just to protect the family name. He asks Noah to take a walk with him, and once they are out in the garden, he mentions that it is common for great emperors such as himself to have their reputation tarnished later on in life. When he says this, he is referring to the fact that if he were to be overthrown, the usurper would likely claim he had grown senile in his old age and was unfit to rule the empire. They both know the usurper in question is Albert, and the emperor clearly doesn't trust Albert in the slightest right now. So the only reason he hasn't punished Albert already is because of the implication denouncing the crown prince would have on his legacy. Noah comes up with a solution to the problem and suggests that since the emperor recently appointed Henry, Oscar, and Noah as minister princes, in order to ensure that operations are handled effectively, he suggests that the emperor should create a whole new position called the prime minister prince and have that position oversee the operations of all the minister princes. He then nominates Albert to fill that role, but the second the emperor hears that, he immediately shuts the idea down because he refuses to entrust Albert with such power. He is about to walk away, but suddenly, Noah calls out to him and says that he can understand why Albert is so impatient to claim the throne, because who wouldn't be after waiting 30 years? At least this way, he could placate Albert by giving him the control and power he desires, even if only symbolically. The emperor understands where Noah is coming from, but if he gives Albert power over the three prince ministers, then there's a chance that he will prevent them from bringing important matters to his attention. That certainly is possible, but Noah already thought of the perfect solution to that problem, which is why he intends to add a clause where if all the minister princes agree that a matter is serious enough, they can bypass Albert and go straight to the emperor. The emperor likes that idea because it pretty much means Albert will have no real power, but it would still be enough to stop him from lashing out. The emperor is extremely grateful to Noah for coming up with such a brilliant solution to the problem, and he wants to give him a reward for his effort, but money won't be sufficient in this case, so he invites Noah to head to the vault with him. He tells Noah he is free to choose any item he wants from the vault. So Noah heads inside and starts looking around with the help of Leviathan, eventually settling on a special box. But the second he opens the box, he is engulfed in flames. Noah soon realizes that the artifact has a consciousness of its own, just like Leviathan does, and since that's the case, he knows exactly how to deal with it. He uses Leviathan to pierce through the artifact's flames in one go and assert dominance over it. And now that he has established himself as the artifact's master, the flames around him recede, and he is left holding a ring. Now that Luthier is in Noah's possession, he gets a significant boost to his fire magic stats, and the Emperor is amazed that he was able to tame it so quickly, though he should have expected as much from Noah. He asks if Noah wants to test it out because he can prepare a few targets for him, but Noah tells him that it won't be necessary because he has something better in mind. He takes the Emperor out into a clearing in the woods, and once he is ready, he activates Luthier, but instead of aiming at something else, Noah launches the fire at himself. The Emperor is worried about him for a second, but Noah assures him that there's no cause for alarm because he just wanted to test Luthier's strength compared to Leviathan. And just as he expected, Leviathan is slightly stronger than Luthier, so he is able to keep the flames under control. Furthermore, he is also able to restrict the range of the artifact to ensure the Emperor's safety, and having this level of control over an artifact that he received literally minutes ago is nothing short of unbelievable. But the Emperor has come to expect the unexpected with Noah. He formally entrusts Luthier to Noah and asks him to use it for the sake of the Empire. A little while later, Noah is brought before the Emperor as the Minister of Justice, and he is appointed to deliver judgment on a particular internal affairs case. The Emperor's brother, Graham, has a nephew who happens to be a little shit, and the nephew has always been tyrannical in ruling his domain. But he went too far this time because he recently killed a completely innocent person for no reason, and that is a serious crime. Graham has taken responsibility for the incident and even offered to pay a hefty fine for it. But Noah tells the Emperor that they can't accept a fine from Graham because he hasn't committed any crime. According to imperial law, just like a child can't be held responsible for the wrongdoings of their parents, a parent can't be held responsible for the crimes of their child. The Emperor agrees with Noah on that, and he is sure that Graham is also aware of that fact, but he is probably trying to buy them off to put an end to the matter. The sum he offered was 30,000 reen, which is 250 times the average yearly income, so it is quite a significant amount, but Noah insists that according to the law, they can't accept fines from someone who hasn't broken any law. In that case, the Emperor asks if they should rewrite the law to allow voluntary payment of fines since the Imperial Treasury could really use those extra funds. Noah understands the Emperor's point, but he thinks it would be a bad idea to make a law like that because it would make people believe they can get away with crime as long as they pay enough money, and that would make crime mitigation considerably more challenging. He acknowledges that the Treasury is in grave need of funding, but he thinks it would be best if they find a more respectable way of acquiring those funds. The emperor realizes Noah is right, and he is so impressed that he decides to grant him an honorary title as his premier advisor. Noah is grateful for the new title, and this gives him the perfect idea for a way to make money for the empire. He suggests that the emperor could grant honorary titles to those who pay 1,000 rein into the treasury. After all, most people would love the idea of receiving an honorary title from the emperor, and when a person gains more money than they can spend at once, they usually tend to seek out honor instead. So there should be no shortage of willing participants. The emperor thinks this is a brilliant idea and asks his prime minister to go summon Oscar at once to have him implement this idea since he is the minister of finance. Hearing this, Noah decides to leave for today because he wouldn't want to encroach on Oscar's area of authority, but as he steps outside, he finds a group of people gathered around the hole he made earlier. Just then, he is approached by a man named Shizu, and Shizu explains to him that the others are just intrigued because they have no idea how the ground melted in such a way. One of them even fell in trying to figure it out, which Noah finds amusing. He hands a pouch of money over to Shizu and asks him to spare no expense in treating the person who fell into the hole, since he is the one responsible for it, and Shizu thanks Noah for being as generous as always. Just then, Noah notices that Shizu is carrying something, so he asks what it is, and Shizu explains that it's a box of rhino beetles. Apparently, the 16th prince enjoys watching them fight, so he asks for a few to be captured for him. Noah finds the idea of watching creatures fighting intriguing, so on the carriage ride home, he decides to try it out with Leviathan and Luthier. He asks them if they would be willing to face each other in battle, and both Leviathan and Luthier seem up for it. So they manifest miniature forms and start duking it out. Noah watches with interest as the two battle non-stop, but ultimately, Leviathan is still slightly superior to Luthier, so he eventually wins. One of Noah's maids happened to see the whole thing, and she was really intrigued because she had never seen anything like it. But then she realizes that it's impolite to look at what Noah is doing without permission, so she apologizes for the intrusion. Noah tells her he doesn't mind and even offers to show her some more, since Luthier seems to want a rematch. Noah wonders if he can get stronger by watching these two fight, and as he takes a look at his stat screen, his theory is confirmed because he realizes his level just went up. After returning home, he has Leviathan and Luthier fight a dozen more times, and so far, Leviathan has won every single battle, but each time, Luthier's technique improves bit by bit until he is finally able to defeat Leviathan. After the last battle, not only did Noah's level go up once more, Luthier's rank also went up a little, meaning Noah's items can grow stronger by facing each other in battle, and he gains experience from the whole process. Zoe is amazed because this basically means that Noah can indefinitely raise his level without even needing to fight, but Noah tells her it's not that simple. The first time his level went up, all it took was one battle, but to get the second level up, it took 10 battles, so the experience required probably goes up with each level. Just then, Henry shows up looking for Noah and tells him that he is about to be sent on his first mission. Apparently, a monster nest nearby has recently begun acting up, so Noah has been tasked with handling it, and to decide how many troops Noah will need to take, Henry pulls out a special magic box. For this kind of thing, you don't want to take too many or too few soldiers, so the box analyzes your capabilities and comes up with an ideal number of troops for the mission. However, when Noah touches the box prints out the number 1, meaning Noah alone is enough to handle the monster nest. Henry is shocked since this is the first time something like this has ever happened, but is it really surprising at this point? Later that day, Noah is in his study, reading a book when he is suddenly informed that someone is here to meet him, so he stops what he's doing and tells them to come in. The person in question is Reese, and he apparently has a message from the Emperor for Noah. According to the imperial customs, a person delivering a message from the Emperor is to be treated as the Emperor's proxy and afforded the due respect, so Noah kneels before Reese as he delivers his message. Reese then proceeds to inform Noah that by the Emperor's orders, his mission has been postponed until further notice, and after he's done delivering the message, Reese kneels before Noah to show his respect. As a member of Henry's house, Reese has to follow the rules which state he must always show proper respect when meeting a prince, regardless of which prince it is. After he's done paying his respects, Noah asks Reese if he knows why the Emperor postponed the mission, since Noah should be more than capable of handling it on his own. But Reese informs him that it is precisely because of how capable Noah is that the Emperor postponed the mission. He apparently wants to turn it into a grand event so everyone in the Empire can bear witness to how great Noah is, and if that's the case, then Noah assumes it's going to take a while for everything to be prepared. In the meantime, Noah decided to head to the local artifact merchant to see if he has any sentient artifacts in stock, but unfortunately, The man says he hasn't come across anything of that nature. Noah is disappointed, but he kind of expected it to be difficult to come across something like that, so he hands the shopkeeper a bag of money and tells him to keep an eye out for anything that fits that description. He also promises to give him an extra reward if he finds something good, and I know Noah is trying to be generous, but if the Empire's treasury is kinda low on funds, maybe he shouldn't be handing money out left and right. Noah is about to start heading home, but as he is leaving the market, he notices a commotion, and it turns out that there's a man threatening a shop owner because the dude didn't want to sell him an item that someone else has already reserved. Dalem was notorious for this kind of behavior, but none of the shop owners in the area could do anything about it because his status pretty much makes him untouchable. However, Noah suddenly yells at him to stop, and as soon as Dalem spots him, he recognizes Noah as the 13th prince, but he doesn't look particularly worried. Noah tells Dalem that what he was doing just now counts as intimidation, and that is a serious offense. But Dalem corrects him and informs Noah that he is a member of Prince Gilbert's house, and as per Imperial law, he can't be convicted of any crimes aside from murder or treachery. Which means even Noah can't punish him for something as minor as intimidating a few shop owners. Noah knows Dalem is right about that, and normally, there really would be nothing Noah could do to punish Dalem. But then he remembers the rule about members of an imperial house being required to show respect to all princes when meeting them. And that's good enough of a reason for Noah to accuse Dalem of being disrespectful to the royal family. He then orders Shirley to apprehend Dalem, and while she has him pinned to the ground, Noah asks if anyone has something he can use to punish Dalem. And since the shop owners hate Dalem so much, one of them wastes no time pulling out a whip. Dalem is tied to a stake shortly after, and Shirley asks Noah how many lashes she should give him. Noah says that if Gilbert found out that one of his people was using borrowed authority to terrorize his people, then he would most definitely give them the death penalty. So that's exactly what he plans to give Dalem, and a long and painful lashing session later, Dalem was pronounced dead. Noah regrets nothing, but he does realize that his decision was overstepping boundaries since Dalem was one of Gilbert's people, so he decides to go over to Gilbert's mansion to apologize. And to really sell the apology, he asks Shirley to put him in handcuffs. Upon arriving at Gilbert's estate, Noah explains what happened in great detail and apologizes for failing to discuss this with Gilbert before making such a decision. But Gilbert seems pretty chill about the whole thing and tells Noah that he did nothing wrong because he wasn't someone worth worrying over. If anything, he thinks it's fair to say that Noah did him a favor by protecting his reputation from a man who would commit crimes in the name of a prince, and with that, Gilbert formally forgives Noah for what happened. Now that all is said and done, Noah and Shirley leave Gilbert's mansion. But as they are walking away, Shirley asks Noah if it was really necessary for him to handcuff himself to apologize even though Gilbert was so chill about the whole thing. But Noah reveals to her that in reality, Gilbert was furious the entire time. But because Noah came to apologize immediately, he couldn't take his anger out on him and was forced to accept the apology. The next day, Noah is back at home when he is suddenly informed that a member of the imperial family is here to see him, and as he agrees to the meeting, he is introduced to Don. Don says he has heard a lot about Noah's exceptional capabilities, and he says he would like to come serve under Noah here, to which Noah agrees. But he can tell that there's something off about Don, so he asks Dylan to do a thorough background check on him. Sometime later, Dylan completes the investigation on Don, and just as Noah suspected, it turns out that both Don and his parents are loyal to Gilbert, which means Gilbert likely sent him here as a spy. The servants of a prince usually have to follow strict rules about who they can interact with, so it is common for them to end up marrying and having kids with one another. And any children they have ultimately end up swearing loyalty to the prince from a young age. Don is one such child. But even though no one knows he is a spy, he tells Dylan to keep this under wraps for now because he can use this information to his advantage later on. Dylan understands, but still, he is most impressed by the fact that Noah was able to discern the fact that Don was a spy during their first meeting. However, Noah didn't actually do anything special. He just noticed that even after he agreed to let Don serve him, his stats didn't go up, and that could only mean that Don wasn't truly loyal to him. In other news, Dylan informs Noah that the merchant whom he asked to keep an eye out for special artifacts is here, and he claims to have something that might interest Noah. Noah orders for the man to be brought in, and once he arrives, after greeting Noah, the shop owner presents him with the artifact he recently acquired, a large painting. Noah is a little caught off guard by this since he was expecting the artifact to be something like armor or weaponry, but as he approaches the painting, Leviathan begins to react, so he can tell that there's definitely something off about it. He asks the owner if the painting is somehow cursed, and the man confirms it. To demonstrate, he brings out a replica painting that was created around the same time as the original, and while the two paintings may look similar, Noah notices that there's a slight difference in the facial expression of the girl. If the replica was made to be an exact copy of the original, then that must mean the original changed over time, and if it got Leviathan to react, then it must have a consciousness somewhere in there. Noah then draws Leviathan and uses it to sever the bond between the painting and the consciousness, allowing the girl trapped inside to finally escape. And though it may have worked as Noah intended, the owner is understandably freaked out because he didn't expect to see a spirit float out of a painting today, even if it was cursed. Just then, he notices that Noah seems to be having a conversation with the spirit, which makes no sense to him since the spirit has been silent since she left the painting. However, for some reason, Noah is able to communicate with her, and as a result, he learns that she met a tragic fate. She was killed by the original creator of this painting, and her blood was mixed into the very paint used on the canvas, which is why she was bound to the painting and unable to leave. That said, as a spirit, she doesn't really have many options when it comes to deciding what to do now, so Noah offers to take her in if she swears her loyalty to him, and the spirit seems more than happy to do so. Having gained a new magical subordinate, Noah's earth magic stat gets a decent boost, but that's not all the spirit can do. The spirit's name is Hawaii, and she apparently has the ability to replicate the shape of objects and people she has seen. So to demonstrate, she turns into the shop owner. The shop owner is speechless because he can't believe he is staring at an exact copy of himself, but this isn't all it is capable of. Noah then combines the spirit's power with the power of his ring, and as a result, the spirit's immaterial body is solidified, so the owner is able to touch one of Huawei's hands, while the other hand remains intangible. An ability like this will most certainly come in handy for Noah someday. So he thanks the owner and tells him he is willing to pay any amount he names, but he wants him to continue looking for artifacts similar to this, to which the man agrees. Later on, Noah gets a visit from Byron, which comes as a surprise since he wasn't expecting him, and he certainly doesn't remember requesting all this stuff. But Byron says this is just a token of his gratitude because, thanks to him, Adam was accepted as a servant in the palace, and now she has been promoted to an attendant, which means she now receives backshots from the Emperor, and that's a huge honor. Noah can see that Byron really splurged on his gifts today, and he guesses that the things here are all worth around 30,000 reen. And Byron is surprised that Noah was able to so accurately guess the exact value of the gifts. Consorts are divided into 4 ranks in the palace: attendants, concubines, regular wives, and then above all the others, the Emperor's legal wife, the Empress. There can only be one Empress, so Noah warns Byron that if Ada wants to move up, then the highest she can go is to the level of a regular wife, but Byron was already well aware of this. He just hopes Ada can earn as much of the Emperor's favor as possible, but Noah tells him that favor alone won't be enough to guarantee Ada a position. After all, he is sure that the other consorts will go to extreme ends in order to sabotage Ada to keep her from surpassing them. It's the Wild West out there. So Noah tells Byron to send Ada as much money as she needs so she can afford to defend herself. Byron understands, so he heads off to go take care of matters, and once he is gone, he calls Zoe in because he has a task for her. He wants her to deliver a letter to his mother, one of the Emperor's regular wives. But Zoe is a bit confused, since delivering messages is usually a job for someone like Dylan. Noah knows that, but men aren't allowed to enter the inner chamber where the palace women reside, and Noah himself is no exception to that rule, which is why he only gets to see his mother once a year. Anyway, the letter is basically informing his mother that he is acting as Ada's guardian, and as such he would like her to look out for the girl to make sure nothing bad happens to her. Zoe asks Noah if he really intends to use his own mother for political reasons, but he says that's just the way things work here. Besides, it's not like he's that close to his mother anyway, since he has only met her a couple dozen times in his life. On that note, he asks Zoe how her mother has been doing lately. Zoe tells him that her mom has been doing great, and she is extremely grateful that Noah has created a place for her here in the capital, but there's something that has been bothering her recently. She isn't sure if it's something important enough to mention to Noah, but Noah says he wants to know what it is, so Zoe informs him that one of her mother's duties is to close the gate at night. But recently, while doing so, she caught a glimpse of what looked like someone sneaking around the premises. She couldn't get a good look at the person's face, so she doesn't know who it was, but it seemed really suspicious to her. Noah has a good idea of what might be going on, so he thanks Zoe for bringing this to his attention and asks her to tell her mother not to mention this to anyone else in the meantime. Later that night, Zoe's mother is closing the gate as usual, but all of a sudden, Don sneaks up behind her and kills her with a poison needle to the neck. He then runs off to avoid being spotted, but all the while, Noah, Zoe, and her mother are watching from a distance. Noah had anticipated something like this because he knew the only person who would be sneaking around this late at night would be Dawn, and if Dawn thought Zoe's mother had seen him, then he would undoubtedly come back to take her out in order to protect his cover as a spy. Thanks to Noah's preparations, the person that Dawn just killed actually ended up being Huwawa disguised as Zoe's mother, and Huwawa's ability allows her to leave behind a totally realistic corpse. So Noah asks Zoe to take the body and return it to her hometown for burial. Of course, this is only a temporary measure to make sure Dawn doesn't realize that Zoe's mother is still alive because he might try to come after her again. He also uses this as an excuse to give Zoe some time off to spend with her mom, and both of them are deeply grateful for Noah's consideration. Later on, we see Dawn badly injured and bandaged up in a cabin in the forest while Noah sits at his bedside. When he wakes up, Noah tells him to take it easy because he nearly died back there. It turns out that after Dawn reported that he had killed the person who witnessed him sneaking around to his handler, he was deemed a liability for being too careless as a spy and was stabbed on the spot. Noah says he saw it all happen because he had tasked Huwawa to keep track of Dawn's actions, and if he hadn't been there to help, then there's no doubt that Dawn would have died. Dawn is impressed that Noah was able to figure out that he was the spy so easily, and he can understand why people call him the Wise Prince now. He honestly would have preferred to serve under Noah, but he was already in the service of Gilbert, and he had no choice but to follow orders. Noah tells Dawn to stop talking as though it is too late for him to turn things around because as long as he sincerely swears his loyalty, Noah is more than willing to accept him as a genuine subject. Dawn is shocked to hear that and asks if Noah is sure he wants to accept someone like him even after everything he has done. Noah confirms it and promises that he won't discard Dawn the same way Gilbert did, but he warns that if Dawn were to ever betray him, he can expect a fate worse than death. Dawn understands and swears his loyalty to Noah on the spot, and this time, Noah notices that his win stat went up a little, which must mean Dawn was really sincere this time. That said, since Gilbert thinks Dawn is dead, he's going to have to lay low for a while with a new name to avoid being found. He tells Dawn to find a quiet region within Almeria and head there in the meantime, and Dawn is so touched by how far Noah is going for him that he wants to repay the favor. He's not sure this is going to be enough to repay Noah's kindness, but he tells him he has some information regarding a gift Gilbert recently gave the Emperor, and upon hearing the details, Noah's eyes go wide with panic, so he immediately requests an audience with the Emperor. When Noah meets with his father, he immediately warns him to stop drinking the Ponix wine that Gilbert gave him. The Ponix wine is a wine produced in Gilbert's territory, and Gilbert has been offering it to the Emperor for almost a year now. To any observers, it would look like nothing is wrong, since the Emperor and Prince Albert have been drinking it in public for a while now with no negative side effects so far. However, that was all part of Gilbert's plan. According to what he learned from Dawn, Gilbert specifically developed the wine to be safe to drink in most cases, but when consumed with a meal of dragon's claw, it becomes a deadly poison that kills instantly. And it just so happens that the Emperor and Prince Albert have a tradition of eating dragon's claw together once a year. This way, since people had seen the Emperor drink the wine before, with no sign of poisoning, they wouldn't suspect that Gilbert's wine had anything to do with the Emperor's death, and he would be free from all suspicion. The Emperor thanks Noah for bringing this to his attention, and a mission would later be carried out to capture Gilbert for his assassination plot. With that, there's nothing left for Noah to do here, so he prepares to leave, but just then, he realizes it's strange that the Emperor had no idea of Gilbert's assassination plot despite his vast information network. However, it turns out that the Emperor knew about the plot all along, and he had secretly swapped out all of Gilbert's wine for a similar-looking one to avoid being harmed, but Noah figuring it out and coming to report it to him was an unexpected turn. He has been Emperor for a long time, and there are many who would like to see him die to free up the throne, but Noah is not one of those people, and knowing that reassures the Emperor. He declares that from today forward, Noah will be appointed as Vice Minister of Military Affairs alongside his job as Minister of Justice. He is also appointing Noah as Governor General of the First Army, and he tells Noah that in the event that one of the princes does manage to kill him someday, he wants Noah to use the Imperial Army to seize the capital, and from there, Noah is free to choose whomever he wants as the next emperor. Later on, Noah meets with the Emperor alongside Albert to discuss the investigation that was recently conducted on Gilbert. Documents related to the assassination plot were discovered among his belongings in his mansion, so it is undeniable that Gilbert was the one behind the attempt. The Emperor asks what Noah thinks should be done from here, and according to the law, an attempt on the Emperor's life is equal to treason, so Gilbert is to be cut in half at the waist. Albert thinks an execution like that is fitting for someone who attempts to usurp the throne, but Noah can see that the Emperor is still hesitant, so he proposes an alternative. He says that they can reduce the charge to attempted murder instead of treason, and though the sentence still calls for execution in the same manner, the execution date is completely up to the emperor's discretion. Albert doesn't understand what the point of such a decision would be, but Noah is looking at this from both a legal and emotional point of view. Gilbert may have attempted to kill the emperor, but he is still the emperor's son, so it's natural that the emperor would be hesitant to execute him, and this way, they can effectively turn Gilbert's death sentence into a life sentence instead. The emperor appreciates Noah's consideration, but Albert remains adamant that Gilbert must pay for his crimes in blood, so the emperor relents and puts Albert in charge of deciding the date for Gilbert's execution. Albert then leaves the room, and once he's gone, the emperor tells Noah that he would normally transfer Gilbert's territory to him as a reward for his assistance, but since Noah tipped him off in private, giving him a reward would draw too much attention, and the other princes might start trying to frame one another to gain similar rewards. Thus, the emperor says he will not be giving Noah a reward this time, and Noah is very understanding. That aside, the emperor reminds Noah that he will soon need to relocate back to his territory, so it's time for him to start thinking about his future wife. Noah had almost completely forgotten about this, but getting engaged around the age of 12 is a common occurrence in the imperial family. A first wife is usually chosen for solely political reasons, so Noah himself has no say in who he will be forced to marry, but he can at least try to make this as favorable as possible. The emperor suggests that Noah should marry the granddaughter of his uncle, his second cousin. Apparently, divination has revealed that she and Noah will have a very clever child together, so it would be very advantageous, and Noah says he is fine with the arrangement. So the emperor says he will begin the marriage negotiations as soon as possible. Back at home, Noah summons Don to the meeting room, and Don immediately panics, recalling that Noah said he hates betrayal more than anything in the world, and Don basically just betrayed Gilbert. He accepts his fate and begs Noah to at least make his death painless, but Noah tells him to get up because he's not the kind of person who executes people on a whim. He says he called Don here for two reasons, and the first is to inform him that Gilbert has already been executed, and all power that his estate once held is gone, so there is no one coming after Don anymore. Secondly, since Don provided information that helped capture Gilbert, Noah tells him he has earned himself a reward. Normally the reward amount would be 1,000 reen, but Noah is going to raise it to 10,000 reen for him. Noah even offers to help him get a position if he wants, and Don is deeply grateful for Noah's consideration, so he swears to serve him for the rest of his life. After Don is gone, Noah calls in Zoe and informs her that now that Gilbert and his subordinates are gone, her mother doesn't have to stay in hiding anymore either, and Zoe is deeply grateful for that. Later on, Noah is walking through town with his maid when he notices a huge commotion over there. He approaches to see what's going on, and there, he finds out that there's a young woman challenging onlookers to a good old-fashioned brawl. The rules are simple. You pay an entry fee of 3 rien, and then you fight her in a fair 1v1. If she wins, she gets to keep the entry fee, and if you win, you get to keep her as a slave. This sounds like a really bad idea, and Noah wants to shut it down, but while the law strictly forbids illegal slave trade, it says nothing about selling yourself into slavery. So this technically isn't against the rules. Before long, someone from the crowd steps up to take on the challenge, and he seems pretty confident in his chances of victory. But a moment later, he ends up on the ground, defeated and completely humiliated. Over the next few minutes, 15 more challengers arise, but every single one of them was taken down with ease. So now, no one is willing to make a move. Eventually, one more person decides to challenge her, so the woman tells him to pay the fee so they can get started. However, the man says there's no need for that because he knows he's going to win. He charges at her without warning, and she prepares herself to parry his attack, but all of a sudden, she feels part of her body go numb. And before she could even process what had just happened, the man punched her so hard that she passed out. For a moment, the crowd is speechless because they can't believe the man managed to beat her so easily, and the man proudly declares that she is his slave now, but Noah stops him and points out that he broke the rules. The fight was supposed to be a fair one-on-one, but he clearly had one of his friends shoot the woman with some kind of numbing dart. The man tries to deny it, but Noah has already identified his accomplice and uses his magical pressure to knock the guy out, after which, everyone realizes that Chad was cheating. Chad is enraged after being called out like that, so he charges at Noah, but that goes about as well as you'd expect because a moment later, Noah has given him a few warning slashes, and he collapses on the floor. It's pretty clear that he stands no chance, so he gets up and runs off before he humiliates himself any more than he already has, so he runs off into the crowd, vowing to get his revenge. The girl later wakes up laid out on a bench with Noah sitting next to her. Noah is glad to see that she's alright, so he asks her if she remembers anything from the incident a few minutes ago. Her memory is fuzzy, But the last thing she remembers is that she was fighting some random guy, but midway through, her legs suddenly went numb, and after that, she's not sure what happened. Noah informs her that Chad cheated and had someone poison her mid-match, and the knight is furious to learn that Chad used such a dirty trick against her. But Noah reminds her that it was a dumb and risky idea to offer herself as a slave as part of a stupid bet. He asks her why she would ever choose to do something so dumb in the first place, and that's when the girl reveals that she's completely broke. She came to this city to participate in this year's knight selection exam, which is being hosted by the 10th prince this time, but she didn't make the cut, and she doesn't have enough money to return home, so she was trying to raise some funds. After hearing that, Noah is really confused because he can't believe that a fighter as skilled as her didn't make the cut for the knight selection, but there's a bit more to the story. Apparently, after taking the exam, the 10th prince called her to his private chambers, and he told her that the only way he would allow her to pass the exam was if she gave him some going gluck action, but she refused, so he rejected her as a knight. Noah thinks about it, and from what he knows about the 10th prince, that guy is definitely the kind of person who would do something like that. Noah turns to the woman and asks her if she still wants to become a knight, and the woman confirms it. So Noah decides to reward her dedication and gives her a total of 100 reen, which should be enough for her to live in the city until the next knight selection exam. He even has his maid prepare accommodations for her, and by now, the woman is starting to realize that Noah isn't just some ordinary boy. Unfortunately, Chad wasn't smart enough to realize that, so instead of just letting what happened go, he decided to go grab his friends and come back to beat Noah up. Again, this goes about as well as you would expect, with Noah beating the living crap out of them for their behavior, and come it is all over, Noah notices one of the knights of the 10th prince standing nearby. From the fact that the knight did nothing to stop those guys, Noah can tell that he must have been paid off to attack him, but upon recognizing him as the 13th prince, the knight realizes how bad that idea would be, so he bows to beg for forgiveness. Since the knight didn't actually attack him, Noah agrees to let it go just this once, but he tells him that he's going to have to punish Chad and his group. After seeing all this unfold, all the pieces about Noah's true identity fall into place for the woman, and it's clear that he is the 13th prince, but what she is most impressive by is how humble he is. Because the entire time he was talking to her, he didn't flaunt his status in the slightest. Just then, Noah notices a man sitting on a bench nearby clapping for him, and at first, one may think this is just a random guy, but Noah immediately recognizes him as the uncle of the emperor, the Lightning Prince, Indra Arat. A few decades ago, when the emperor first took the throne, he was still way too young to effectively rule the kingdom. So Indra took power as the emperor's proxy, and kept the empire running until he could assume the throne. And when the emperor was finally old enough, Indra stepped down from the throne without causing a fuss, and retired from politics to live a peaceful life in his fief, so he is a man worth respecting. Indra is glad that Noah recognizes him, but he isn't one to stand on formality, so he asks Noah to come sit next to him. He asks Noah if he knows why he came here today, and Noah responds, assuming that Indra is here to evaluate him because he will be marrying his daughter. Indra tells him he's right, so Noah asks what will happen if he doesn't meet Indra's expectations, and Indra says he just won't let Noah marry his granddaughter in that case. Noah reminds Indra that this was an imperial decree from the emperor himself, so refusing the engagement would be seen as going against the emperor. Indra is aware of that, but he knows the emperor wouldn't use such technicalities against him. After all, Indra practically raised him when he was a kid, so the emperor has a lot of respect for him. If it were about anything else, Indra wouldn't hesitate to respect the emperor's authority, but when it comes to his precious granddaughter, he has to personally ensure that her future husband is a good match for her. Noah understands, so he asks Indra if this means he has passed the test, but Indra says that remains to be seen, and a moment later, an invisible force begins pressing down on Noah from all sides. Noah recognizes this as the same technique he uses to subdue opponents, so he prepares to counterattack. But then he realizes that he's probably a lot stronger than Indra in his old age, so he should probably take it easy so as not to humiliate Indra in public. Indra feels the pressure Noah is releasing, and it only takes a second for him to acknowledge that Noah is certainly worthy of his granddaughter, especially since he can tell that Noah was holding back for his sake. Satisfied with what he has seen, Indra tells Noah that he expects him to take good care of his granddaughter in the future, and Noah agrees without hesitation. To celebrate the occasion, Indra decides that everyone should go get some drinks together, and he tosses Noah a ring as a personal gift. Noah catches it, and a moment later, he hears a deep and powerful voice echo in his mind. In the next instant, the entire world around Noah changes, and he finds himself alone in the middle of a wide-open field. Before he can even process what's happening, a massive magic bull comes charging straight toward him at full speed. It tells Noah to prove that he is worthy of wielding his power, and by this point, Noah knows exactly how this works. So he takes out Leviathan and calmly strikes the bull down. Once the bull stops moving, it submits to Noah and his master, and when Noah checks his stats and notices that his light skill has a +C next to it. Just as he's looking over the change, the bull suddenly speaks. A moment later, Noah returns to the real world, and seeing the expression on Noah's face, Indra can tell what just happened. The creature Noah just defeated is known as the Behemoth, and it is an extremely powerful magical beast with a special ability. As Noah listens to the explanation, he casually slides the ring onto his finger and reaches over to pick up a nearby kettle, and the moment he touches it, it turns to solid gold. Indra is impressed because even at the peak of his own strength, he was never able to tame Behemoth, yet Noah managed to do it almost instantly. After that, Noah summons a small manifestation of the Behemoth's form and explains to Indra that he is able to grow stronger by making these little guys battle each other. Indra doesn't know what Noah is talking about, so Noah decides to give him a demonstration and summons the Leviathan, Hawawa, and Luthier, but then something strange begins to happen. Apparently, it has been several decades since all 4 of these magical items have been gathered together in the same place at the same time, and now that they are all present, something very special is about to happen. Noah finds himself in a dream space where he hears the voices of all 4 artifacts, and they talk about how they haven't been brought together since the Silver Age. The last guy who unleashed their power was level 255, so they are eagerly awaiting the day that Noah does the same. After they say this, Noah returns to his body, and for a moment, he wonders if he hallucinated the entire thing. But then the crowd of citizens around him start staring at one another in awe because they just heard a voice addressing Noah, so they assume it must have been God bestowing blessings upon him. Indra heard the voice as well, and he also believes it was God, so he congratulates Noah because this is truly a joyous occasion. Noah agrees with him, and to commemorate the moment, he has his maid hand out 10 reen to everyone present. This is part of an old tradition among nobles, where whenever something tremendously good happens to them, it is customary to share that joy with those around you in any way you can, which in most cases means handing out money. Just then, the Night Lady speaks up and asks Noah for permission to reject the offer he made to her earlier. Noah asks her why she would want to do something like that, so she explains that she has decided that she wants to become Noah's knight, and when that happens, she wants it to be because of her own merit, not because Noah gave her a helping hand. Noah understands where she's coming from, but he still rejects her request and tells her that that's something only a second-rate knight would do. She's worried that she might fail to live up to Noah's expectations after accepting his help, but if that's the case, then he tells her all she needs to do is work even harder to make sure she doesn't fail. The knight is moved by Noah's words, so she agrees to work her hardest to live up to his expectations, and Indra is impressed by how well Noah is able to talk to people and quell their worries. Just then, the Emperor shows up and tells Indra that that's just one of the many things that make Noah special. As soon as Noah and Indra realize the Emperor is here, they both get down on their knees, and the civilians follow soon after. However, the Emperor says there's no need for such formalities since he's already outside the castle, so he asks Indra to sit next to him. And Noah decides to summon a full-size luthier figure to act as an intimidating presence. This way, no one will dare approach or disturb the Emperor while he's here. The Emperor planned to use this as an opportunity to have Noah escort him while he talks to Indra, so he's glad that Noah was able to catch on to his intention without being explicitly told. A little while later, Indra and the Emperor are sitting in a carriage together because the Emperor has something he wishes to talk about, and seeing that it's likely a sensitive matter, Noah makes Luthier release a brilliant pillar of fire to distract the civilians. Meanwhile, inside, the Emperor tells Indra that he's thinking of disinheriting Albert as the crown prince. Indra asks what brought this on, so the Emperor tells him about the recent incident with Gilbert's assassination attempt. It's true that Gilbert crossed a line, but he was still one of his children, so as Noah suggested, the Emperor would have preferred to give him a life sentence rather than execute him. However, Albert was furious at the thought of sparing his own brother and insisted on the execution. Albert technically didn't do anything against the rules, but the Emperor worries that if Albert were to claim the throne as he is now, that kind of restlessness would inevitably lead to a purge. And the first people he would target would no doubt be Henry, Oscar, and Noah. Indra now understands why the Emperor wants to disinherit Albert, but he also asks if a new successor has already been chosen. However, the Emperor says he hasn't made his mind up yet. Indra tells him he can't go leaving the crown prince position empty, because it will divide the nation if he were to die before making a decision. The Emperor is aware of that, but it's not like he isn't sure who to choose. He has already made his choice, but he's worried that if he announces his choice, then it will cause major feuds to arise. Indra understands that, but he still thinks it better than going without announcing a crown prince at all. Just then, Noah interjects and suggests that the emperor could write a will and announce that his successor will be written in that will. Indra doesn't think that will work since wills can easily be forged, but Noah already thought of that, which is why he suggests keeping the will inside the emperor's body, like engraving it into a tooth, for example. That way, no one would be able to forge or tamper with it, and both the emperor and Indra agree that it's a great idea. They later head back to the palace, and once there, the emperor orders everyone except Noah and Indra to leave the room at once because he doesn't want anyone to hear this conversation. All the servants slowly begin walking out, but one remains. And when Noah asks about it, he is informed that this guy is deaf and cannot read. So he is kept around as a servant for private conversations like this, since he wouldn't be able to eavesdrop. Noah is intrigued because he had no idea about that, but moving on, he makes one more suggestion to the emperor. He thinks it would be best if the emperor took back full military control, because if he goes through with the will idea and one of the princes with control over the military disagrees, then they could use that military power to take out all the others and install themselves as the new emperor. Something like that happening would be catastrophic, so the emperor agrees to take away the military titles he gave out, including the one he gave to Noah. Indra is impressed that Noah would come up with such an idea even though he's one of the people who would be stripped of their title, and that kind of honesty is exactly why the emperor values him so much. The emperor writes up the decrees, stripping Noah and the other princes of their military control. But now that that's taken care of, Indra asks how the emperor plans to handle the disinheriting of Albert. In Noah's opinion, there is no need to be so worried about it because at the end of the day, the emperor has full authority to choose and disinherit his heir whenever he so chooses. But since Albert hasn't committed a specific crime, he thinks it would be fitting to at least let him remain a prince. The king agrees with Noah, but he wants to make it clear that there is no way Albert will ever be considered as crown prince again. So Noah suggests that he should give him a title such as Ended Prince, to signify that Albert will never be able to move beyond the prince title. The emperor agrees with Noah's suggestion, so he decides to go with it and begins writing the official decree. However, he is having trouble actually finishing the letter because while he may not believe Albert is fit for the role of emperor, it still pains him to strip his son of his birthright. Once the emperor is eventually done with the letter, he hands it over to the servants, but for a split second, Noah notices the servant taking a look at the documents and he hesitates for a moment after seeing it before walking towards the door. This gets Noah's attention because the servant is not supposed to be able to read, yet he clearly reacted to the contents of the decree, which means he can read. Noah grabs the man to stop him and quickly pins him to the ground, after which Noah informs the emperor and Indra that the man can read. This is a major breach of the emperor's trust, so he yells for the head servant, Cruz, to get in here this instant. And once he arrives, he demands to know why he would bring a servant who can read into this room. Cruz had no idea, so he quickly lowers his head to the floor and begs for forgiveness for his horrible mistake. The emperor asks Noah what he thinks they should do with the servant, and Noah thinks immediate execution is the best course of action. Indra asks him if he's sure he doesn't want to try to get some information out of the servant before killing him. And it's true that doing that would lead them to the one who planted the servant here in the first place. But there's a good chance that the one behind it was Albert. And with the emperor already stripping him of his title as crown prince, having a scandal like this come out would just make things even more messy. The emperor agrees with Noah's assessment, so he lets him go ahead with the execution as planned, but then he turns to Cruz and asks Noah what he thinks his punishment should be. Judging by Cruz's reaction, he'd had no idea that the servant could read, so his only crime here is a slight lack of oversight. Thus, a 6-month pay cut should be an adequate punishment for him. A little while later, the emperor meets with his prime minister, and he is informed that the execution of the lying servant has been carried out. The emperor is glad to hear that, but he still can't help but worry about what he will do about Albert now. Even if he can't entrust him with ruling the kingdom, Albert is still his son, so he worries for his well-being. On a different note, the emperor asks the prime minister if he's aware of the name Leviathan. The minister confirms it and says he recalls that being the name of one of the 4 sages who lent their power to the emperor during the Silver Age. The king informs him that those sages seem to be lending Noah their power now, and the minister thinks this is great news, because if anyone is capable of surpassing the Silver Age, it's Noah. And for that reason, the emperor plans to watch him closely and see how well he grows. The next day, Noah leaves the castle, and while he's on his way out, he tells his knight to get ready because they are heading to Albert's castle to talk to him. She immediately readies her sword in preparation for conflict, but Noah tells her there will be no need for that since his life won't be in danger there. He soon arrives at Albert's mansion, and despite the fact that he knows the emperor plans to disinherit Albert, he still addresses him as the crown prince to avoid giving away the fact that he was part of that discussion. Albert seems fairly polite and tells Noah that there's no need for formalities here because they are brothers. Noah thanks Albert for being so understanding, and then he turns to his knight and tells her to wait outside for him. This is a gesture to show that he trusts Albert enough to go in without any protection, though it's not like he would need it since he's practically the most powerful person in the kingdom at this point. Albert asks him if he would like to go to the living room or to the garden, and since Noah has heard wonderful things about how well-maintained Albert's garden is, he says he would like to go there. Thus, Albert leads him to the garden, and upon arrival, Noah is amazed by how beautiful this place is, especially that double-trunk tree over there, because it must have been really difficult to acquire. Albert is proud of his garden, but he isn't very particular about the plants in it, like that double-trunk tree Noah was admiring. It was apparently a gift that cost 50,000 rian, but since Noah seems to like it, Albert decides to give it to him. This is the second time Albert has given Noah a gift, and though the first time with Leviathan was just meant to be a prank of sorts, and he didn't actually expect Noah to be able to master it, he has learned that treasures are meant to be given to people who can bring out their true value. Noah thanks Albert for the generous gift, and now that that's out of the way, Noah changes topics and mentions that since summer is here again, the Emperor is likely going to travel to a place with a cooler climate to escape the heat as usual, but there's one major difference. This time, the Emperor will be taking Albert along with him. Upon hearing this, Albert stands up in shock because in prior years, whenever the Emperor traveled, he would leave Albert temporarily in charge as a means to give him experience as a ruler, so changing that now could only mean that the Emperor is no longer considering him as a future heir. Albert asks Noah if he knows what's going on, but Noah feigns ignorance and suggests that the Emperor must just want to teach him many things on the trip together, but in reality, the Emperor just wants to bring him along so he doesn't have to worry about Albert pulling any tricks while he's gone. Noah hoped that Albert would take the news well and leave things as they are, but that was too optimistic of him, because later that night, while he was in his study, he receives a visitor named Olivia, and she is here to warn him that Albert plans to lead a coup against the Emperor tonight to claim the throne for himself. This is a serious accusation, so Noah asks her if she has any proof of her claim, and she explains that she used to be a member of Gilbert's household as the daughter of the butler. She had sworn her life to Gilbert, and she heard about how Noah tried to find a way to spare his life, but Albert went and executed him anyway. She swore that she would get revenge, so she planned to get close enough to him to do some serious damage, and part of that plan was to seduce Albert, which she succeeded at. But that's when she overheard part of his plan. Albert knew the Emperor planned to denounce him as the crown prince, but that information hadn't become public yet. So he intended to lead his men to attack the castle tonight and overthrow the Emperor in order to seize the throne for himself. Albert is taking this a lot worse than Noah thought he would, so he needs to do something about it before things get any worse. But before that, he asks Olivia what her position was when she still worked under Gilbert. She explains that she acted as an apprentice to the main butler, so Noah tells her that from today onward, that will be her position in his estate, and her pay shall be equal to what it once was. Olivia is shocked because she doesn't understand why Noah would be treating her so well, but he simply says he is rewarding her loyalty. After that, he makes his way to the front door because he plans to go out to handle the situation, and normally, he would be required to take a carriage with an escort, but he tells his subordinates that he wants to do this alone, so they let him leave by himself. From what Noah knows, if Albert is planning to use his position as crown prince to take over the empire, then the only force he would be able to do so with would be the troops stationed at the Ministry of Military Affairs. There are 1,000 men in total, and they have been trained to follow the orders of whomever has command over them without question, which in this case is Albert, so they will no doubt follow through on his orders once he gives the command. At that moment, at the Ministry of Military Affairs, Albert steps out onto the stage and he begins talking to the soldiers about how stagnant this empire has become due to the current emperor. He thinks there are countless vermin corrupting the nation, and the only one who can fix the problem is him, so he plans to do something about it, and the knights go along with it without a second thought. Just then, Noah arrives, and he immediately begs Albert to stop what he is doing. Albert calmly asks him what he's doing here so late at night, so Noah tells him he heard about what he was planning to do tonight, and he tells him that it's not too late to stop before he does something foolish. Albert's eyes narrow as he asks Noah who told him because he wants to make sure to punish the person who ratted him out, but Noah says that's not the point right now. He tells Albert that if he goes through with this, then it will bring about his own ruin, but Albert doesn't care because he refuses to accept death while sitting around and doing nothing. Noah is shocked when Albert mentions death because he must think that the Emperor plans to kill him as part of the denouncement, but that's far from the truth. Noah explains to him that the Emperor agonized over this decision for ages, and despite everything Albert has done, the Emperor refused to disclose it publicly because he wanted him to continue to live as a prince. Hearing this, Albert yells that being a prince is no better than death for him, because he has waited 35 years thinking that he would one day sit on that throne, but that turned out to be a lie. Albert isn't willing to give up on the throne after all the waiting he has done, so if the Emperor refuses to hand it over to him, he has no choice but to oust him with his military might. Noah is honestly surprised because he never thought he would hear someone say being a prince is not enough. After all, for most people in this world, including him, the title of prince is one of the greatest honors you can have. You have the freedom to do as you wish, to help as many people as you want, and you also get privileges that the general populace could only dream of. But in Albert's case, since he was once crowned prince, getting demoted to a regular prince must be tantamount to death for him. Albert asks Noah if he really insists on trying to stop him, and Noah says he can't let this happen. Albert kind of expected this to happen since he knows Noah is that kind of person, and he didn't want to do this. But now he is left with no choice. He orders his soldiers to capture Noah immediately, so Noah is now forced to fight for his life. The knights immediately charge at Noah all at once, and Noah is impressed by how well trained they are because they didn't hesitate to follow through with Albert's orders even though he told them to attack a prince. It is for this exact reason that Noah doesn't want to hurt them, since this isn't really their fault, so he just uses his pressure to knock a bunch of them out for now. All that exertion is starting to tire him out a little, so Noah decides to call on Luthier's power to help fend off the rest of the knights, and as Luthier manifests in the sky, the knights all shrink back in fear because they have never seen anything like this before. Luthier then begins shooting flames at them, but Noah tells him not to kill any of the soldiers, so he stops before anybody gets seriously hurt. Albert is absolutely shocked because he has never seen such power before, and he is startled when Noah walks up to him afterward. He asks Noah if he intends to kill him, but Noah says he's not going to do that because the Emperor would no doubt be sad if he found out that one of his sons killed another, which is why Noah offers Albert a bottle of poison and tells him to drink it. He doesn't plan to kill Albert, but he also doesn't intend to stop him from killing himself. Albert refuses and yells that there's no way he would ever willingly drink poison, but Noah asks him if he has considered the fact that if Noah were to kill him, then he would be branded a traitor, and all his family and subordinates would be executed as a result. But if Albert were to kill himself instead, then the story would be that he led a force to attempt a mutiny, but stopped at the last second and took his own life. That way, his family and subordinates would all be spared, but Albert absolutely refuses to accept such an ending, so he orders two of his men, Foster and Howard, to seize Noah at once. The two of them begin walking forward, and Noah fears he is going to have to take them down, but to his surprise, they actually grab Albert instead. Albert demands that they release him immediately, but Howard tells him to shut up because Noah just gave him a solution that would save Albert's family and subordinates, yet he would rather take them down with him. Howard has been holding a grudge against Albert for a long time because a few of his friends were among the people whom Albert sacrificed to Leviathan a few years back, and he never forgot about that. The same goes for Foster, so neither of them are willing to follow Albert's orders any longer. Albert yells at them and reminds them that he is still the crown prince, so they are required to give up their lives for him, but the two couldn't care less about that at this point. They cover Albert's mouth and tell Noah that it seems like Albert truly regrets his actions and has chosen to take his own life after all, and Noah understands what they are trying to say. So he calls for Olivia to come over and hands her the bottle of poison so she can get the revenge she so desperately desires. Olivia thanks Noah for being so considerate toward her and takes the bottle, and as she is walking towards Albert, he starts calling her ungrateful because he took her in after her faction was destroyed, but he was the one who caused her faction to be destroyed in the first place, so why would she be grateful to him? Foster and Howard hold Albert's mouth open as Olivia pours the poison into his mouth, and then they hold his nose shut to force him to swallow before releasing him. Moments later, Albert coughs up blood and falls to the ground, with the last thing he ever sees being the imperial castle, whose throne he could never claim. Once he is dead, Olivia, Foster, and Howard all turn to Noah and respectfully reiterate that Albert has taken his own life after deeply regretting his actions, so they hope his subordinates and family can be shown mercy. Noah assures them that all that will be said of this matter is that Albert attempted to seize control of the throne, but thanks to the actions of an informant and two knights, he was able to see the error of his ways, and racked with guilt, he decided to take his own life, with his final wish being to spare his family. In accordance with the rules already set in place, the three of them will be rewarded for their roles in stopping Albert's plot, and all of Albert's family and subordinates shall be overlooked because they were not involved in the crime. He said he would also urge the emperor to allow Albert's eldest son to succeed so the faction remains functional, and they all thank him for his help. Noah takes a quick look at his stats afterward, and he realizes that a bunch of his basic stats have gone up by a lot, meaning Howard and Foster must have sworn their loyalty to him, and they are quite talented, so this works out great for Noah. He is honestly surprised that Albert had such talented men under him, and if he had truly appreciated that, then his coup may have succeeded. But Albert was the kind of person who failed to see the value in the people beneath him, so he was doomed to fail from the start. Meanwhile, in the palace catacombs, the emperor is standing over a box when his prime minister comes to find him. He explains to the prime minister that a moment ago, this box seemed to react, and that must mean that Noah is finally starting to use the true power of his artifacts. But he also knows that it must mean something really bad went down, so he asks the prime minister to tell him what happened. The prime minister explains that after finding out about Albert's plot to seize the throne, Noah rushed over to him to try to persuade him not to do it. But Albert apparently took his own life by the end of it all with poison. The emperor accepts that and asks the prime minister to leave him alone for a while because he has a lot to think about. He knows for sure that the story about Albert killing himself was just Noah's way of being considerate toward the innocent people who would have been affected, but it still hurts to think about the fact that both Gilbert and Albert are now gone. After that, the empire entered a period of peace since there were no more insurrection attempts, and the other princes wouldn't dare cause trouble after what already happened. 3 years later, the region of Almeria has become greatly prosperous, and many people are sending in gifts to celebrate Noah's upcoming birthday, so the maids are busy sorting through them. But there are a lot more than usual this year. Zoe explains that these are all gifts that were sent for both Noah's 15th birthday and his relocation to Almeria to rule as its official lord, and the list of people who are loyal to Noah has only continued to grow by the year. Meanwhile, outside, the now 15-year-old Noah is busy training when Audrey, his betrothed, comes out to see him. She asks Noah if he wants to have some breakfast now, and Noah says he would like that, so Audrey asks Zoe to prepare a table. A little while later, Noah and Audrey sit down together to have their tea, and Noah mentions that it will soon be time for their wedding. Audrey is very excited to officially become Noah's wife because she has been waiting so long. Meanwhile, Indra is sitting on a bench nearby, as he had apparently been discussing with the emperor recently to figure out who the new successor will be. It has been narrowed down to either the 4th prince, Henry, the 8th prince, Oscar, or the 13th prince, Noah. But everyone knows he is going to choose Noah at the end of the day.